Chapter 297. Just as Zhou Wen bent his leg, he suddenly felt a violent rage erupt in his body like a volcano. Following that was an extremely terrifying force that instantly made Zhou Wen's leg bend straight. When Lord Alcohol heard Zhou Wen's words, he was about to mock him when his expression suddenly changed. All the strength in his body instantly erupted as he struck forward with his palms. Boom! Zhou Wen's body floated in midair with his limbs spread wide open. His hair stood on end as his entire body suffused a demonic and domineering light. When the light erupted, Lord Alcohol used all his strength to block it, but the powerful strength he had obtained from the longevity tree was instantly destroyed. He was sent flying like a kite. Seeing Lord Alcohol fall to the ground and struggle a few times without being able to stand up, Zhou Wen wore an incredulous look as though he couldn't believe his eyes. Holy **T. So the power of the Sai of the King doesn't need to go through my body to be activated? Zhou Wen finally reacted. The power of the Sai of the King hadn't gone through his body, but had instead erupted directly. In the past, when Zhou Wen used the Sai of the King, it was like he was holding a heavy saber that he needed to swing with his own strength. However, this time, the eruption of the Sai of the King was like using a pistol. After pulling the trigger, the power was shot out. Zhou Wen didn't need to use any strength, nor did he need his body to withstand the power. Impossible. Such power doesn't belong to the epic stage. Lord Alcohol struggled to stand up as he stared intently at Zhou Wen as though he was looking at a monster. However, his current situation wasn't much better than Zhou Wen's. He staggered as he walked and had no ability to continue fighting. Zhou Wen wasn't any better. He was heavily injured, and with the damage he had suffered from using the Sai of the King, it was difficult for him to even stand up. Thankfully, I have Banana Fairy. Zhou Wen ordered Banana Fairy to attack Lord Alcohol. Banana Fairy immediately flew towards Lord Alcohol. Lord Alcohol's expression changed slightly as he forcefully gathered his strength and charged towards the longevity tree. He wanted to climb it again and pluck another longevity fruit. However, just as he touched the longevity tree, he saw roots that resembled poisonous dragons rise from beneath the tree and wrap around Lord Alcohol's body. The tips of the roots pierced into his body like blood-sucking venomous snakes, sucking him dry in the blink of an eye. Save! Lord Alcohol widened his eyes in horror as he stretched out his hand with great difficulty, hoping to seek help. However, just as he said a word, he was pulled into the ground by the roots and vanished. Zhou Wen felt a chill run down his spine when he saw this. He was even more certain that the longevity tree wasn't anything good. After a while, Zhou Wen saw a white flower bloom on the longevity tree. The flower bloomed quickly and withered quickly. Soon, it withered and fell, producing a fruit. The fruit looked like a baby sitting cross-legged. It was completely white and emitted an alluring fragrance. Zhou Wen stared blankly at the fruit on the tree. For some reason, he felt nauseous. The small perfection of Wisdom Sutra kept repairing Zhou Wen's injured body. Zhou Wen summoned an ordinary golden warrior, and got it to carry him to Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning's side. After checking their injuries, he realized that although their injuries weren't light, they weren't dead. They had only fainted. However, they didn't have the ability to heal themselves. After suffering such serious injuries, it would be difficult for them to survive if they weren't treated quickly. They could die at any moment. New 81 Chinese website updates. Fastest cell phone. Dr. Darkness's injuries are also very serious. Furthermore, even if he isn't injured, that fellow only knows how to fight poison with poison. He doesn't know how to heal people. Zhou Wen couldn't think of a way to save them. Just as he was sighing, he heard a rustling sound. It came from the direction of the longevity tree. Realizing that something was amiss, Zhou Wen turned his head and realized that the roots of the longevity tree had drilled out again. Like strange snakes, they swept towards Zhou Wen and company. Zhou Wen hurriedly summoned the demonized general and the saber-shield knight. He got them to take one each and ran towards the front hall with Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning. Su Kamsu, when also sat on White Shadow of Poison's back and got it to carry him out. But before they could run out, the tree roots that drilled out of the ground had already crawled to the exit of the rear hall. Like a spider web, they crisscrossed and sealed the exit. It's over. I wonder if there's any use in kneeling now? Zhou cursed inwardly. Seeing the large swath of roots sweeping over, he could only grit his teeth and charge towards the underground fault. The bottom of the fault was dark red and filled with a sea of blood threadworms. However, Zhou had no other choice. He leaped down along with Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning. The tree roots seemed to have some misgivings. When they reached the side of the fault, they didn't chase after them. After Zhou and company landed, they could only rely on their companion beasts to kill the swarms of blood threadworms. However, there were just too many of them. They couldn't kill them all, and the three of them didn't have any combat strength. Two of them were unconscious, so blood threadworms had already crawled onto Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning. Clang, clang, clang. Just as Zhou was feeling helpless, he heard a familiar voice. The strange car. It's here. Zhou was delighted as he hurriedly controlled his companion beast to fight the blood threadworms. As long as he lasted until the strange car arrived, the three of them would be saved. Indeed, it didn't take long for the strange car to drive out of a cave. Zhou looked at the strange car and was surprised to discover that there was a person on it. Young Master One, why are you here? Didn't I get Lu Yunxian to take care of you and forbid you from entering the ancient battlefield? The person on the strange car was none other than Enxing. Zhou wasn't in the mood to answer Enxing's question as he shouted at him. Let's not talk about this for now. Quickly get Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning onto the car. They can't hold on any longer. Enxing jumped down from the strange car. His clothes were neat, and even his hair wasn't messy. Clearly, he wasn't as miserable as Lu Ning imagined. Enxing got Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning onto the strange car. Zhou also jumped up and sat in the strange car, panting. Didn't I forbid you from entering? Why are you here again? Enxing looked at Zhou reproachfully. Do you think I wanted to come? If it wasn't to give you that darn stone artifact, I wouldn't have come to such a godforsaken place. Zhou recounted what had happened. After Enxing heard that, he said in surprise, the stone artifact is actually on you. Well done. Quickly give it to me. Without it, I won't be able to open the ancient temple's door and rescue Madame. That's right. The stone artifact is with me, but there's a small problem, Zhou said with a cough. Don't tell me you lost the stone artifact again? Enxing said as he looked at Zhou. Chapter 298. I didn't lose it, but the stone artifact was eaten by one of my companion beasts. It has now turned into a stone egg and is in the process of evolving. Zhou took out the stone egg that Truth Listener had transformed into. I wonder if this can be used as a replacement for the stone artifact? I don't know. I'll give it a try. Enxing wasn't sure either. After some thought, he said, Give me the stone egg and leave in the chariot. This chariot will keep driving out of the ruins, so there shouldn't be any danger. Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning's injuries also need to be treated. There are no healing-type companion beasts here. Were you the one who sent Lu Ning out? Zhou said as he handed the stone egg to Enxing. The blood threadworms on her aren't easy to deal with, so I had to send her out first, Enxing said as he took the stone egg. What's going on with you and Lord Alcohol? Zhou didn't believe that Enxing would be careless enough to bring a group of people with ulterior motives without knowing anything. It can be considered a mutual benefit. Lord Alcohol has a motive, and I also need someone to attract the attention of the longevity tree at the Temple of Immortals. Enxing carefully put away the stone egg. Have Sis Lan and the former principal been found? Are they all right? Zhou asked the question he wanted to know the most. They should be inside the temple. However, due to the lack of the stone artifact, we couldn't open the temple. Now that we have this stone egg, we should be able to open the temple and rescue them if nothing unexpected happens. Go back first. We'll talk when I get back." As Sheng spoke, he jumped off the strange chariot and headed for the cave that the strange chariot had come from. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief as he leaned against the chariot's back. He felt his entire body hurt. If I had known that I could have taken the chariot directly to the temple to find Sheng, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. I nearly died. Zhou looked at Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning and saw that they were in terrible condition. He didn't know if they could last until they returned to the camp. On the return journey, the chariot took the same route as when it came. After passing through the desert and sea, the chariot drove out of the ruins' underground tunnel. Zhou brought Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning back to the camp. Zhao Xian treated their injuries and finally saved their lives. The blood threadworms that had crawled into their bodies weren't fatal, but as Dr. Darkness was seriously injured, he was temporarily unable to remove the blood threadworms. All he could do was leave them unconscious. Zhou was also severely injured, but the spring recovery vine's strength was limited. Zhou got Zhao Xian to take care of Lu Yunxian and Lu Ning, while he used the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra's recovery powers to slowly recover. Lying in bed, he grinded the bat cave again. Although the drop rate of bats wasn't high, there were quite a lot of them. They did drop some items, but none of them were good. When will a baby tiger drop? I'll bring the baby tiger to grind the bat cave. I'll definitely gain a lot more. Zhou was extremely displeased that he hadn't managed to get the baby tiger. Arriving at the underground seaside again, Zhou carefully sized up the sapphire sky, but he didn't discover anything inside. Why isn't there a chariot in the game? Since he couldn't travel in the air, Zhou could only walk on the surface of the sea. He rode on White Shadow of Poison and flew at a low altitude, not daring to fly too high. After flying for a short while, he saw seawater spray out as a black gem-like sea dragon rushed out of the sea. It opened its mouth and tried to devour Zhou and White Shadow of Poison. Its dragon mouth was like a black hole with terrifying suction force, sucking White Shadow of Poison in. It had no way of resisting and couldn't even fly out despite struggling. Zhou hurriedly got White Shadow of Poison to use its Shadow of Darkness skill. It was really effective as it transformed into a shadow along with the blood-colored avatar. Then, it used flash to escape the dragon's devouring. But soon, from different directions, a few black dragon heads popped out and opened their mouths to suck at White Shadow of Poison. Zhou heart remained calm as he controlled the blood-colored avatar to use ghost steps to jump off White Shadow of Poison's back and rush into the sea. White Shadow of Poison was bitten by a few dragon heads and could no longer survive. After the blood-colored avatar jumped into the sea, Zhou controlled it to quickly dive down as he looked at the bodies of the sea dragons. Zhou had seen them twice before and realized that the parts of their bodies under the sea seemed to be connected. Now that he had the chance, he naturally had to take a closer look. As far as he could see, Zhou was surprised to discover that it wasn't a 9-headed dragon. The parts of the 9 black dragons' bodies under the sea were chained up. Black chains passed through their spines, and their bodies were connected to a black war chariot. The war chariot seemed to be made of metal. The walls were sealed and there was a roof. It was impossible to see what was inside. When the 9 black dragons moved, they would pull the huge metal war chariot slowly. Therefore, the speed of the black dragons was greatly restricted. Otherwise, they would have run even faster. A war chariot pulled by 9 black dragons. Who has the right to sit in such a war chariot? Zhou didn't know if there were any creatures inside the war chariot. If there were, it would be terrifying. However, from the looks of it, it had been abandoned for a long time. There were many things like seaweed wrapped around it. There were also some shellfish and corals that had taken root, making the war chariot look very strange. Wait, what's that? Zhou Wen's gaze landed on the corals on the war chariot and suddenly lit up. In the midst of the corals and the seaweed, there was a black gemstone-like bead. Zhou Wen suspected that the bead was the legendary dragon pearl or a dragon egg. If I can obtain that dragon pearl, I wonder if I can use its power to raise my final stat to 21 points? Just as Zhou Wen had this thought, the game screen turned black. A black dragon devoured the blood-colored avatar, ending Zhou Wen's game. However, Zhou Wen wasn't depressed. Instead, he was extremely excited. He seemed to see hope of advancing to the epic stage. Those black dragons were very likely mythical creatures. The dragon pearl in the coral nest might be their descendant. Eating a dragon egg should be able to replace the effects of the divine blood. Most importantly, the 9 black dragons were chained to the black war chariot. As the war chariot was too heavy, the 9 black dragons' mobility was greatly affected. This gave Zhou Wen an opportunity to snatch the dragon pearl. Otherwise, it was impossible for Zhou Wen to survive in front of those mythical creatures. How can I obtain that dragon pearl? Zhou Wen kept thinking. Although he felt that it was highly possible, Zhou Wen made a few more attempts. However, he failed to approach the war chariot and was devoured by the black dragons. From the looks of it, I have to think of a meticulous plan. I wonder if kneeling will work? Zhou Wen thought to himself. Chapter 299. Zhou Wen didn't know if kneeling was useful in real life, but it was indeed useless in-game. Don't ask Zhou Wen why he knew. Just saying it made him want to cry. After grinding for a few days in the camp, he didn't obtain any Dragon Balls. Instead, he killed quite a number of poison bats. His poison stat had already reached 15 points, and a few poison bat companion eggs dropped. However, the poison bat stats were far inferior to the white shadow of poison. Zhou Wen fed them to his pets as food. On the 4th day, Anxing returned with Ouyang Lan and a few others. When Zhou Wen saw that the former principal wasn't among them, he immediately had an ominous feeling. Sis Lan. Zhou Wen went forward to ask why he didn't see the former principal. Ouyang Lan looked somewhat exhausted as she forced a smile and said, "Little one, Anxing said that you helped us a lot this time. However, don't take the risk to do such things again in the future. This has already exceeded your abilities. Luck can't always be on your side." "I got it. Sis Lan, where's the former principal?" Zhou Wen hurriedly asked. Ouyang Lan's expression darkened. "I didn't find him. We found some items of my dad and the other experts in the temple, but we didn't find any traces of them in the temple." Zhou Wen's mood improved when he heard that they hadn't been found. Not finding them meant that there was still hope. "Hence," Zhou Wen said, "could it be that they aren't in the temple and are trapped somewhere else? That shouldn't be the case. It's easy to enter the temple, but it's very difficult to leave. If no one outside opens the mechanism, it's impossible for the people inside to come out. My dad and the rest have clearly gone deep into the temple. Without anyone rescuing them, it's unlikely they can come out," Ouyang Lan said with a shake of her head. Zhou Wen was taken aback when he heard that. Just as he was about to ask Anxing said, "Madam hasn't rested for a long time inside. Let her rest for a while." Zhou Wen had no choice but to swallow the words that were at the tip of his tongue. He planned on asking Anxing later. Everyone returned to the camp. Before Zhou Wen could find Anxing came to Zhou Wen's tent and roughly explained what had happened inside. Ouyang Lan and Anxing had found the temple by following the marks left behind by the former principal. They didn't find any marks left behind by the former principal anywhere else, so they were certain that the former principal was in the temple. However, they couldn't find him despite searching the entire temple. The last mark left behind by the old headmaster was on the altar in the temple, which meant that something must have happened to them after they arrived there. However, that was already the innermost layer of the temple. There were no other exits, nor were there any mechanisms that could make people disappear. The old principal and the others seemed to have vanished into thin air. Zhou Wen frowned in silence after hearing that. There was definitely something wrong with the temple, but even people as knowledgeable as Xing and Ouyang Lan couldn't find any clues. It was probably useless even if he went. Don't worry. We've already scouted out a small part of the ruins. With the chariot, it's safe to go to the temple. We'll find professionals to investigate the temple and look for all possibilities. And Xing paused before saying, however, based on the current situation, it won't take a day or two to find old student Ouyang. Madam wants you to return to school first and not waste time here. Alright, I'll head back. However, before I leave, can you take me to the temple? I want to take a look. Although he knew that it was useless, Zhou refused to give up unless he took a look. And Xing seemed to have guessed that Zhou would make such a request, so he nodded and agreed. The path to the temple was indeed very safe. The chariot was a direct train that went straight to the temple. It would automatically stop when it reached the temple. Someone needed to activate it before it would head to the entrance of the ruins. And Xing led Zhou into the temple. As he had already scouted out the various dangers in the temple, Zhou didn't sense much danger when Xing led him in. They went all the way to the innermost part of the temple. And Xing showed Zhou the mark left behind by the former principal. Zhou looked around the temple for a long time, but he didn't find any clues. Although he was indignant, Zhou had no choice but to return. It was useless for him to stay here. He could use his phone to enter the temple to continue exploring. Perhaps he could find some clues. However, there was no chariot in-game. If Zhou wanted to reach the temple, he had to pass through the underground sea. This was also a difficult problem. Zhou roughly knew that the chariot in-game was likely parked in front of the temple. As no one activated it, it didn't appear. Clearly, the chariot's purpose was to send people out, not bring them in. And Xing got someone to send Zhou back to Luoyang. After Zhou returned to school, he felt a sense of familiarity. He hadn't been away for many days, but he felt a little uncomfortable. Perhaps the contrast between the comfortable life in school and the daily life and death struggle on the Zhuolu battlefield was too great. He couldn't immediately adapt to the contrast. My top priority is to advance to the epic stage as soon as possible. Otherwise, if something really happens, it will be difficult to deal with it if I'm not strong enough. Zhou thought about how he could obtain the Dragon Pearl. As the Dragon Pearl was underwater, an aerial movement technique like the Dragon Gate Fairy skill wasn't very effective in water. Ghost Steps effects were greatly reduced due to the water's resistance. This left Zhou very vexed. Unable to think of a good solution, Zhou first went to Wang Mingyuan's place. Knowing that Wang Mingyuan loved tea, he specially got Xing to buy some good tea for him. Of course, Zhou paid for it himself. Teacher, this slip of paper of yours is a lifesaver. However, I tried it again. Why is it useless? Zhou took out the slip of paper and respectfully returned it to Wang Mingyuan. Later, he tested it a few more times and realized that ever since the slip of paper was used on Lord Alcohol, it no longer had any effect on other dimensional creatures. It was as though it was just an ordinary slip of paper. Have you ever seen a bowl of rice that can't be finished no matter how much you eat? Wang Mingyuan took back the slip of paper and said with a smile. Zhou immediately understood that the power on the slip of paper had been exhausted. Teacher, how did you know that my life providence would react if I knelt down and begged for mercy? Zhou asked the question on his mind again. He had never told Wang Mingyuan what his life providence was. Wang Mingyuan said with a smile, my research includes the art of observing people. It can be considered to have some success, so I can tell a bit about your life providence. I observed your life providence to have its own pride. It's something I've never seen in my life. I know that your life providence is extraordinary and that it shouldn't be able to endure such humiliation. It might be of some use, so I got you to give it a try. From the looks of it, it really worked. Give it a try. Zhou was instantly rendered speechless. Then, can I still use this move in the future? Zhou hurriedly asked. Since this move was so useful and he didn't really need to kneel, it would be a waste not to use it. Have you heard of the idiom, "One would rather die than be humiliated"? One time can make your life providence erupt in anger. If it's repeated, I'm afraid this anger will be vented on you. I wonder if you can withstand it? If you can give it a try, Wang Mingyuan said with a smile. Zhou couldn't help but shiver when he thought of Lord Alcohol's outcome. He hurriedly said in all seriousness, "A man's knees are gold. I've never thought of kneeling. I'm just asking." Chapter 300. The antelope and chick that Wang Lu had entrusted to take care of were also brought back by Zhou. It wasn't good to keep troubling Wang Lu. Furthermore, he had to return the favor eventually. It would be even more troublesome when the time came. The chick had clearly gained a lot of weight from eating. Although it looked a little bigger, Zhou had a nagging feeling that it wasn't because it had grown up. The antelope still looked like it was on the brink of death. It lay lazily on the sofa and slept all day. Apart from food that piqued its interest, it didn't move much. After consulting Wang Mingyuan, Zhou learned that in the school's dimensional zone, there was a place called Poison WRM Pool. In the pool, there was an epic creature, Poison WYRM. The Poison WYRM had a chance of dropping a primordial energy skill called Dragon Transformation Art. It was a movement technique in water that could greatly increase a person's speed in water. Zhou current goal was the Dragon Transformation Art. However, Poison WYRM Pool would only occasionally have one Poison WYRM appear. Basically, when it was discovered, it would be dealt with by the military. As for the dimensional zone where Poison WYRM Pool was, it was controlled by the military. If students wanted to enter, they had to apply for a pass from the military. Even if Zhou had a phone to download it, he had to find the tiny palm symbol in the dimensional zone. He could definitely enter by getting in Sheng, but doing so was equivalent to using the family's connections. Zhou didn't wish to do so. Therefore, Zhou called Li Xian to see if he had any way to obtain a pass. Li Xian didn't know much about the place, so he only said that he would ask through his connections. If he could obtain it, he would quote a price for Zhou to see if it was suitable. Finally, Zhou spent 30,000 yuan to obtain a pass. It was a one-time use, and he couldn't stay inside for more than 48 hours. "Old Zhou, why are you going to the underground pool city? Although there are many rare dimensional creatures there, they are all at the epic stage. It's probably very difficult to kill them now. Furthermore, it's not safe. Typically, tutors of the school will apply to go there when they need special companion beasts," Li Xian said as he handed the pass to Zhou. "I want to go to Poison WYRM Pool to take a look. I heard that there's a Poison WYRM there that can drop an underwater movement technique." "I'm very interested in that," Zhou said. Li Xian immediately waved his hand when he heard that. "You said you wanted a pass there. I've also studied the situation there. The venomous snake you mentioned isn't something you can kill at the legendary stage. Even if you can kill it, you won't have a chance. Legend has it that snakes transform into flood dragons after 1,000 years, and flood dragons transform into dragons after 1,000 years. Although the poison flood dragon hasn't transformed into a dragon, it's a top-notch existence at the epic stage. Furthermore, its body is poisonous. Even the water in the poison flood dragon pool is extremely poisonous. Ordinary epic creatures can't enter the poison flood dragon pool, much less kill it. I'm just going to take a look. It's fine as long as it works. If it doesn't, forget it. Just treat it as broadening my horizons." After sending Li Xian off, Zhou took the pass and headed to the underground pool city. When the soldiers guarding the underground pool city saw that a student was about to enter pool city, they kindly reminded him, "Student, although there aren't many dimensional creatures in pool city, all of them are at the epic stage. Furthermore, they have their own specialties. If there's nothing important, it's best you don't enter." "Thank you for the reminder. I'm just going in to take a look. I won't go far," Zhou said gratefully. After handing over the pass, Zhou passed through the checkpoint and arrived in front of the underground pool city. The surroundings of Pool City were submerged, but the water wasn't deep. The deepest part was about a meter or so, and he could see the ground in the shallowest areas. There were many plants growing in the water. There were many reeds, making it look like a forest. From afar, he could see an underground ancient city. The city walls were already modeled, as though they had experienced the merciless destruction of time. Zhou had heard that there were many water monsters in Pool City. Apart from the poison flood dragon, there were often all sorts of water-type dimensional creatures. However, it was fine outside the city. Most of the powerful dimensional creatures were inside the city. There was a cement bridge outside that led all the way to Pool City's entrance. Just as Zhou stepped onto the bridge, he heard that someone had come to Pool City. When he turned to look, he was slightly taken aback. The person walking over from the checkpoint was his tutor, Wang Fei. Although Wang Fei had introduced Zhou to Wang Mingyuan to study, according to the school's rules, Zhou was still a student of Wang Fei's class. Wang Fei was clearly surprised to see Zhou. After completing the procedures, she walked to the bridge and asked Zhou, "Why are you here? This place is too dangerous for students. Teacher Wang Mingyuan got me to come here to take a look. It's a form of observation and learning. I'll just take a look outside and not enter," Zhou said, using Wang Mingyuan's name to prevent Wang Fei from saying anything else. "Since it's observation and learning, follow me. I'm your tutor after all. I can't just let Uncle Mingyuan teach you. Treat it as a lesson for you today," Wang Fei said as she walked along the bridge towards the city gate. "I'm really just here to take a look. I don't want to enter." Zhou was depressed, but he couldn't say it out loud. All he could do was follow behind Wang Fei. As he walked, Zhou sized up the city gate of Pool City, hoping to see if he could find the tiny palm symbol. This time, Zhou's luck was pretty good. He immediately saw a tiny palm symbol beside the signboard on the city gate. Engraved on the palm was an ancient hieroglyph, water. Zhou hurriedly took out his phone and took a picture of the tiny palm symbol on the city gate. When Wang Fei saw it, she said, "Why are you taking a picture of the city gate? Take a good picture when we encounter dimensional creatures. It's best if it's a video and we can slowly study it when we return." Water-type dimensional creatures are a topic that all the Federation's colleges are focusing on. It's very helpful for future expeditions at sea. Zhou also knew that the Federation had always wanted to conquer overseas, but because the situation at sea was different from land, there weren't many people who could really go out to sea. However, experts had predicted that the era of great navigation would soon arrive. Due to this prediction, the price of companion eggs that were related to water rose by a huge wave. Some of them increased by more than 10 times. However, 20 to 30 years had passed, and the so-called era of great navigation still hadn't appeared. It was still extremely dangerous for ordinary people to go out to sea. Even epic creatures didn't dare easily go out to sea. After downloading the Pool City dungeon, Zhou felt a lot more relaxed. He wasn't afraid of the epic creatures, so he thought that it would be good to follow Wang Fei in to take a look. It might be of some help to understand how water-type dimensional creatures fought. After entering Pool City, he realized that the streets were even more flooded. Most of the houses had half their floors submerged. It was a flooded city. Whoosh! Just as the two of them entered Pool City, they saw a wave not far ahead. Something in the water seemed to be rapidly approaching them. Chapter 301. There are two types of water-type dimensional creatures commonly seen in Pool City. Pay attention to the fluctuations of the wave. If the angle of the waves is only about 30 degrees, you have to be careful. That's an epic electric eel. It has extremely powerful lightning powers. Lightning is easily transmitted in water. The best way to encounter an electric eel is to leave the water. It's best if you can fly. If you can't, choose to jump onto a building. In short, you absolutely can't stay in the water unless you have the confidence to withstand the epic lightning with your body. If the angle of the waves is about 50 degrees, that's an epic sword fang fish. Its attack power is very strong, but its intelligence is too low. To an epic expert, it's basically a blessing, Wang Fei patiently explained to Zhou Wen. She had already learned of Zhou Wen's actions at the Zhuolu battlefield from Ouyang Lan. Although Ouyang Lan was very worried about the former principal, she still mentioned Zhou Wen several times and exhorted Wang Fei to help her take good care of him. Wang Fei admitted that she didn't have the ability to teach a special genius like Zhou Wen, but it wasn't a problem for her to teach him some practical experience. After all, Wang Fei had been a real soldier in the past and had participated in many battles. It's very simple to deal with the sword fang fish because its attack power is very strong, but it doesn't have any brains. All you need to do is dodge its attack and stab it. As Wang Fei spoke, the sword fang fish had already arrived in front of her like a torpedo. Its speed in the water was astonishing. Wang Fei's figure flashed slightly before she drew her sword and slashed upwards. After crossing the sword fang fish, a wave of blood appeared in the water behind her. Soon, a 2-meter-long strange fish floated up with its white belly upturned. It was clearly dead. This was the first time Zhou Wen had seen Wang Fei attack. Her sword technique was fast and accurate without losing its elegance. It gave one the feeling that she was leisurely wandering between life and death. She was indeed an expert at the epic stage. Wang Fei sheathed her sword and turned to Zhou Wen. However, if you want to do that, you have to wait for the sword fang fish to come close enough. You have to wait until it's within a meter of you before quickly dodging and striking. You can't give it time to react. If you don't have the confidence to dodge at such a close distance, it's best you jump onto the wall. Don't fight it head-on, understand? Understood. Zhou Wen nodded in response. Wang Fei's experience was gained from actual combat. To a normal person, this experience could be obtained by risking their life. Now that Zhou Wen had Banana Fairy, ordinary epic creatures couldn't do a thing to him. As long as he didn't deliberately court death, he wouldn't be in too much danger in Pool City. Teacher, where are you going? Zhou Wen asked Wang Fei, who was walking in front of him. Although he had Banana Fairy with him, he didn't wish to take too many risks. Don't worry. I'm just taking a stroll nearby. I heard that an electric eel recently appeared here. I happen to want an electric eel companion beast, so I came to try my luck, said Wang Fei. Only then did Zhou Wen feel relieved. As long as she didn't go to places like the poison WRM pool, nothing would happen. Wang Fei led Zhou Wen on the roofs of the buildings, but her gaze was fixed on the water below, searching for traces of the electric eel. They didn't find the electric eel, but they found a sword fang fish. Wang Fei looked at Zhou Wen and asked, "Do you want to give it a try? I heard that you already have the ability to kill epic creatures." "There's no need. I'm not good at fighting in water," Zhou Wen said with a shake of his head. Although Wang Fei had already demonstrated the technique of killing the sword fang fish very clearly, Zhou Wen still felt that since he could safely hunt it in-game, there was no need for him to risk his life to gain experience. Wang Fei didn't say anything about Zhou Wen not killing the sword fang fish. After all, she had heard it from Ouyang Lan. She also knew that Ouyang Lan had heard it from Ansheng, and Ansheng had heard it from Lu Yunxian. Therefore, Wang Fei felt that it was somewhat exaggerated. After all, Ouyang Lan had always thought highly of Zhou Wen. After the incident at the ruined battlefield, she would definitely think even more of him. It was understandable that she had embellished it. It's right that you chose not to attempt it. Killing sword fang fish also requires experience. Watch by the side. I'll demonstrate it again. As Wang Fei spoke, she jumped into the water. She stood on the surface of the water without sinking. It looked like her alacrity was rather impressive. Sensing the fluctuations in the water, the ripples in the water immediately rushed towards Wang Fei. It looked very fast and something was amiss. Wang Fei frowned slightly as though she had realized something. Splash! With a splash, a 4-meter-long golden sword fang fish leaped out of the water and stabbed at Wang Fei like a sharp sword that streaked across the sky. On the golden sword fang fish's body, one could see a blob of golden light. It's a mutated sword fang fish? Wang Fei's eyes focused as she pulled out the sword in her hand and slashed out a sword beam at the mutated sword fang fish. Clang! When the sword beams collided, many sword beams appeared on the golden sword fang fish's body. They cracked like gears, forcefully shattering Wang Fei's sword beam. Wang Fei tapped the surface of the water with her toes and dodged the sword fang fish's attack, engaging it in battle. Zhou Wen watched from the side and realized that the golden sword fang fish was much stronger than the average sword fang fish, especially its sword beam. It could shatter all kinds of primordial energy skills. Wang Fei's sword techniques were extremely exquisite, but the sword beams shattered the moment they touched the sword fang fish's body. She couldn't injure the golden sword fang fish at all. However, Wang Fei's movement technique was elegant and fast. Although the sword fang fish's sword beams were fast, they couldn't injure her. However, the situation was in a stalemate. After watching for a while, Zhou Wen roughly knew the golden sword fang fish's weakness. Although Wang Fei wasn't weaker than the sword fang fish, and the quality of her companion beasts was very high, she didn't have the ability to restrain the golden sword fang fish. Therefore, she was in a stalemate. However, Wang Fei was clearly stronger than the golden sword fang fish. She could definitely kill it, but it would take her more time. Seeing that the battle wouldn't end anytime soon, Zhou Wen sat on the roof and took out his phone. As he gamed, he waited for Wang Fei to kill the golden sword fang fish. When Wang Fei saw that Zhou Wen was sitting there gaming, she nearly died from anger. All she could do was vent her anger on the golden sword fang fish, but it was a little troublesome. She couldn't finish it off in a short period of time. Just as Wang Fei was feeling depressed, she suddenly saw a wave appear on the long street in the distance. The angle of the wave was extremely small as it shot over like an arrow. Electric eel? Wang Fei was immediately alarmed. She still had the strength to deal with a golden sword fang fish, but it would be difficult to deal with an electric eel. Chapter 302. However, on second thought, Wang Fei realized that this was a good opportunity to teach Zhou Wen a lesson. She wanted Zhou Wen to see how he could fight 1 against 2 in a disadvantageous situation and ultimately obtain victory. Zhou Wen also saw the new wave. According to the knowledge taught by Wang Fei, he recognized it as the electric eel and hurriedly got up to help. However, he heard Wang Fei say loudly, "In actual combat in dimensional zones, you often encounter situations that are extremely disadvantageous to you, especially when you are besieged by dimensional creatures. This is a common situation. Learning how to deal with disadvantageous situations is very important for your survival in dimensional zones in the future. Watch carefully. I'll now demonstrate how to use positioning and entanglement to deal with more than 2-dimensional creatures." Upon hearing Wang Fei say that, Zhou Wen sat down again. He really wasn't gaming as he stared at the battle on Wang Fei's side. "Child, watch your teacher's performance carefully." Wang Fei took a deep breath and tapped the surface of the water with her toes. Like an elegant fairy, she dodged the sword fang fish's sword beam and slashed at the electric eel that was charging at her. The electric eel in the water leaped out of the water. It was an eel that was more than 5 meters long. Its entire body shimmered with silver light, as though silver lightning was dancing on its scales. Wang Fei's heart skipped a beat when she saw this. This was because ordinary electric eels were cyan in color, but this electric eel was actually silver. Furthermore, the lightning was a strange silver color, not the normal cyan color. Clearly, it was another mutated species. What's going on? Wang Fei felt that something was amiss. Usually, it wasn't easy to find a mutated dimensional creature, but now there were 2 at the same time. This was too odd. More importantly, Wang Fei had never encountered mutated electric eels before. She didn't know much about them, so she didn't know if she could deal with two epic mutated creatures at the same time. Boom! The silver lightning on the mutated electric eel's body exploded and collided with Wang Fei's sword beam. The sword beam immediately shattered as Wang Fei saw silver bolts of lightning descend from the sky. Zhou stared intently at Wang Fei's battle with the two mutated fish. He watched as Wang Fei's movement technique resembled an immortal as she constantly dodged the attacks on the surface of the water. He couldn't help but marvel inwardly. As expected of a tutor, she's indeed extraordinary. Just this movement technique is above my Dragon Gate fairy skill. From the looks of it, I still need to work harder. Zhou had never seen an electric eel before, nor did he know that it was a mutated electric eel. He imagined that Wang Fei was deliberately displaying her movement techniques and exquisite positioning for him to see. Wang Fei was suffering in silence. The mutated electric eel was harder to deal with than she had imagined. The silver lightning was extraordinary, and it could spread across a large area in the water. Coupled with its amazing speed, Wang Fei was unable to catch up to the mutated electric eel. One couldn't be killed, while the other couldn't be caught up to. Although Wang Fei was capable, she couldn't use them for a moment. All she could do was face the barrage of lightning and sword beams. She constantly dodged and had no chance of counterattacking. She had the intention of retreating temporarily, but she had already said those words in front of Zhou. It would be too embarrassing to retreat now. In the beginning, Wang Fei wanted to rely on her own abilities to find a way to kill the two mutated companion beasts, but she soon realized that it was almost impossible. The mutated sword Fang fish could still tear apart her sword beams through repeated attacks, but the mutated electric eel had a dual water elemental escape technique. With the combination of lightning and water escape in an environment like Pool City, the distance of 1,000 meters was almost instantaneous. Wang Fei couldn't keep up with its speed at all. She wanted to set up a sword beam to stop the electric eel, but the mutated sword Fang fish tore apart the sword beams she set up, preventing them from forming any effective combat strength. Instead, the mutated electric eel's lightning attacks caused Wang Fei a lot of trouble. Lightning flashed in the water, making it impossible for her to touch it. Bolts of lightning struck down from the sky, making it rather difficult for her to dodge. If she were on land, she could still summon companion beasts to help, but apart from flying companion beasts, the other companion beasts would be electrocuted the moment they entered the water. It was useless to summon them. Instantly, Wang Fei was in a very awkward situation. She couldn't fight or retreat. She felt extremely conflicted. Although Zhou didn't understand Wang Fei's complicated feelings, his talent in combat was still very good. He quickly realized that Wang Fei's situation wasn't looking good. It could no longer be described as a disadvantage. If she continued fighting, Wang Fei's life would probably be in danger. Without any further thought, he summoned the banana fan and aimed at the moment the mutated sword Fang fish leaped out of the water. He slapped it with the fan. When Wang Fei saw the mutated sword Fang fish rush over with a sword beam that resembled a wheel of light, she was about to dodge when a gust of wind suddenly swept over. The surface of the water was swept up into a wave that was several meters tall. If it wasn't for the fact that the water had already reached the bottom, the wave would probably have been much higher. The wind swept up the wave and struck the mutated sword Fang fish's body, immediately sending it flying. Even the water beneath it spewed up into the sky like a water pillar that reached the sky. What was even more miraculous was that the water pillar turned into ice and froze in midair. Even the mutated sword Fang fish was frozen in the water pillar. It looked extremely strange. Wang Fei was slightly taken aback as she turned her head to look in the direction of the cold wind. She saw Zhou standing on the roof with a jade-like palm leaf fan in his hand. When she looked over, Zhou had just tucked the fan to his chest. He looked rather refined. Zhou really has the ability to kill an epic creature. Isn't the strength of this fan a little too much? Even among epic creatures, there aren't many who can use such an attack. Wang Fei's expression turned extremely complicated. However, Wang Fei was someone who had been through a lot. After being taken aback for a moment, she immediately snapped out of her daze and dodged the mutated electric eel's attack. Without the mutated sword Fang fish restraining her, it was much easier for Wang Fei to deal with the mutated electric eel. Zhou didn't help again, but Wang Fei no longer had the mood to show off. All she wanted was to quickly finish off the mutated electric eel. It wasn't that Zhou didn't want to help, but that the Grand Wind had drained him of his primordial energy. He needed to rest for a while before he could use it a second time. However, even if he used it a second time, it would probably be useless. The mutated electric eel's electric water elemental escape technique was too fast. The Grand Wind might not be able to catch up to it. Wang Fei vented all her frustration on the mutated electric eel. Sword beams slashed out one after another, forming afterimages in the air. Soon, Zhou realized that the afterimages weren't real afterimages, but corporeal sword beams that remained in the air. Due to the collision of the mutated sword Fang Fish's sword beams, the sword beams couldn't be preserved and were shattered. Now that the mutated sword Fang Fish was gone, the sword beams formed a sword net in the air. When the electric eel slammed into it, its body was immediately covered in blood and wounds. Wang Fei couldn't feel smug after finishing off the mutated sword Fang Fish cleanly. Chapter 303. Ms. Wang, your movement techniques and sword techniques are truly exquisite. Can I learn from you? Zhou asked Wang Fei sincerely. Wang Fei frowned at Zhou, unsure if he was being sarcastic. Although Zhou's EQ wasn't high, he could tell that something was amiss with Wang Fei's gaze. He hurriedly explained, my main cultivation direction is movement techniques, but compared to you, I'm still far inferior. I wonder if you can tell me the name of the movement technique you use and what kind of dimensional creatures can drop primordial energy skills? Wang Fei was momentarily at a loss whether to laugh or cry when she saw that Zhou was very sincere and wasn't being sarcastic. She had thought of so many methods in the past, hoping that Zhou could learn from her, but they were all useless. Who knew that under such circumstances, Zhou would have the thought of learning from her? This movement technique is unique to our family. It's very difficult for outsiders to learn it. Zhou wanted to learn from her, but Wang Fei was in a difficult position. This movement technique was a secret technique of the Wang family. It required the combination of 3 different movement techniques and primordial energy skills to master. Furthermore, the 3 primordial energy skill crystals were unique to the Wang family's dimensional zone. It was impossible for outsiders to obtain them. I see. Then I'll take a look at other movement technique. Zhou was somewhat disappointed. Wang Fei's movement technique was indeed stronger than his Dragon Gate fairy skill. Furthermore, it was more practical. However, since it was a secret technique of the Wang family, Zhou could only give up. Seeing Zhou's disappointed expression, Wang Fei felt a little upset. In the past, she wanted Zhou to learn from her, but he refused. Now that he wanted to learn, she couldn't teach him. You are my student and a disciple acknowledged by Uncle Mingyuan. You aren't an outsider. How about this? I'll return and discuss it with my family's elders. Perhaps there's a chance, Wang Fei said after some thought. She really didn't wish to miss an opportunity to teach Zhou. Thank you, Ms. Wang. If it's too troublesome, forget it. Zhou actually didn't wish to trouble Wang Fei. We'll talk about it when the time comes. This matter might not be settled. Wang Fei didn't say anything else because she really wasn't confident. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhou was the one who wanted to learn, Wang Fei wouldn't have even attempted to vie for it. He dragged the mutated sword Fang Fish and mutated electric eel up and realized that they each had a companion egg in their bodies. 2 companion eggs had dropped at once. This is yours. Wang Fei handed the mutated sword Fang Fish companion egg to Zhou Wen and put away the mutated electric eel companion egg. Zhou Wen thought that he had indeed contributed, so he didn't stand on ceremony. He put away the mutated sword Fang companion egg and planned on thinking of a way to hatch it when he returned. It might come in handy when he went to Poison Wyrm Pool to kill it. In Bright Prospects College's cafeteria, a boy with short black hair was eating quietly. A girl walked over and sat opposite him. She said excitedly, "Mingxiu, I've obtained a spot as an exchange student at Sunset College. I can go to Sunset College with you this time." "Is going to Sunset College worth being so happy about?" The boy looked up at the girl, seemingly puzzled. "Of course it's worth being happy about. That's Sunset College. It's the best college in Luoyang. It's not just in the Luoyang area. Many outstanding geniuses in the entire league wish to study at Sunset College. Being able to go there is the dream of many students, right?" With that said, the girl's eyes darted around as she blinked and said, "Of course, I'm so happy not because I can study at Sunset College, but because I can go to Sunset College with you. Furthermore, I can watch you defeat those lofty geniuses at Sunset College and let them know who the strongest genius here is." "There are many geniuses, but I've never been one," Mingxiu said indifferently. The girl looked at Mingxiu and said excitedly, "I know that you relied on your own hard work, but it can't be denied that in the eyes of outsiders, you are a true genius. You are the strongest genius in the history of our Bright Prospects College. If your father wasn't the chancellor of Bright Prospects College, you wouldn't be studying here. Famous schools like Sunset College and Holy Accord are places you should go. You won't be inferior to any of them. You will even be more outstanding." "Outstanding?" Mingxiu shook his head slightly and reached out to rub the girl's head. "Compared to going to Sunset College, I prefer eating the bento you while basking in the sun." Got it, got it. How many times have you said it?" "Haven't I been training hard recently to get a spot to go to Sunset College with you?" "Where would I find the time to make bento? Now that I've already obtained the qualifications, I'll give it to you tomorrow at noon." "What a glutton," the girl said helplessly. At the same time, Sunset College was also discussing the exchange students at Bright Prospects College. Bright Prospects College and Sunset College had a deep relationship, so Bright Prospects College would have some spots for students from Bright Prospects College to study at Sunset College for a semester, which was 3 months. Although it was called an exchange, it was actually to let them learn advanced knowledge and theories. Sunset College would send students from the college to tutor them one-on-one. These are the spots for this year's tutors. Take a look and see if you have any objections, the managing vice-chancellor said as he pointed at the documents in front of the teachers. Wang Fei picked up the list and looked at it. She asked in surprise, "Why is Zhou Wen's name on it? Aren't the tutors all third-year and above students? Zhou Wen is only a first-year. It shouldn't be his turn, right?" The managing vice-chancellor squinted his eyes and said with a smile, "Zhou Wen is in the top 10 of our school's comprehensive test. He has also defeated John and won glory for our college. If even he isn't qualified, then there aren't many students in our college who are." Wang Fei didn't wish for Zhou Wen to waste his time and energy on being a tutor. She still wanted to fight for it, but before she could say a word, the managing vice-chancellor waved his hand and said, "This matter has already been decided. There's no need to discuss it further." Seeing how determined the vice-chancellor was, Wang Fei had no choice but to swallow her words. After the meeting, before Wang Fei could seek out the managing vice-chancellor, the vice-chancellor kept Wang Fei alone. "This was personally requested by Madam," the managing vice-chancellor said to Wang Fei. "Sis Lan." Wang Fei was slightly taken aback, but since it was Ouyang Lan's request, she had nothing to say. After all, she was only Zhou Wen's teacher, and Ouyang Lan was Zhou Wen's mother in name. Wang Fei picked up the list again and glanced at Zhou Wen's one-on-one tutor. She saw the word Bright Prospects. Bright Prospects? Could it be the one from the Ming family? What is Sister Lan trying to do? Wang Fei looked at Mingxiu's name with an uncertain expression. Chapter 304. In the underground Pool City dungeon, Zhou controlled the blood-colored avatar and ran all the way to Poison Wyrm Pool. There were relatively few dimensional creatures in Pool City, so he only encountered 2 sword fang fish along the way. However, they were ordinary sword fang fish, so killing them was very easy. Using the Overlord Spear's ever-victorious characteristic, he killed them with 1 shot, but nothing dropped. The Poison Wyrm Pool was originally a pool built in the city. After the city was flooded, the pool wasn't completely submerged due to its relatively high position. The square and stone railings beside it remained above the water surface. The blood-colored avatar stood in front of the stone railings and looked down at the Poison Wyrm Pool. He couldn't help but frown. The water in the Poison Wyrm Pool was black. Even if he jumped into the water, he probably wouldn't be able to see anything. He first summoned an ordinary golden warrior and got it to enter the Poison Wyrm Pool to test the water to see if it could lure the Poison Wyrm out. The golden warrior fell into the water and sank with a thud. After a while, there was no reaction from the pool, but the game indicated that the golden warrior was dead. The Poison Wyrm didn't appear. Zhou summoned a few more companion beasts into the water, but the outcome was the same. There was quite a commotion when they went down, but after a while there was no sound. However, the Poison Wyrm didn't appear. With no other choice, Zhou could only get Ghost Bride to give it a try. She had a ghost body and wasn't affected by the poisonous water. She floated straight into the lake. Although Ghost Bride wasn't affected, the pool was pitch black and she couldn't see anything. It was unknown how deep it was. Ghost Bride dived down a few hundred meters, but she still hadn't reached the bottom. Nor did she find the Poison Wyrm. Ghost Bride dived nearly 1,000 meters before finally reaching the bottom. The space below wasn't huge, so she didn't encounter the Poison Wyrm after circling around. Strange, where did the Poison Wyrm go? Has it not respawned? Zhou was puzzled. This was a game, and Zhou was the only player. There shouldn't be a problem of it not respawning. Zhou got Ghost Bride to circle the area again, but she still didn't discover anything. Strange. Zhou had no choice but to go to the school's information network to check on the Poison Wyrm. There was quite a lot of information regarding the Poison Wyrm. After all, it was an existence similar to a dragon. Many tutors had attempted to have a Poison Wyrm companion beast drop. However, there were very few people who could actually kill the poisonous flood dragon. The poisonous flood dragon was also known as the hidden flood dragon. It hid within the poisonous flood dragon pool and would not easily be tempted by external objects to come out. As for the Poison Wyrm pool's water, it was extremely poisonous. Ignoring humans, even companion beasts with poison would find it difficult to survive in the Poison Wyrm pool. There was a mentor who wrote a strategy on how to lure the poisonous Jiao dragon out. The most important point was that although the poisonous Jiao dragon was an aquatic creature, it loved to eat birds, especially bird eggs. As long as he smeared some bird eggs on the stone railings, he would be able to lure the poisonous flood dragon out. If he really couldn't find bird eggs, he could also use chicken eggs. However, he would need to use a large amount, at least 7 or 8 gene. Luring out the venomous Wyrm was only the first step. This was because ordinary epic experts wouldn't be able to withstand the venomous Wyrm's poison. If they were sprayed with a mouthful of poisonous gas, they would most likely die on the spot. Are there bird eggs in the game? I don't have a bird egg on me, but I do have a stone egg. Truth Listener hasn't evolved yet, so I don't know how long it will take. Zhou was somewhat depressed. In reality, only things like companion eggs could be brought into the game. Ordinary items couldn't be brought into the game. If I were to go to the poison WYRM pool in real life, I could directly bring the chick over. It might be useful to tie it up and use it as bait, but where can I find the chick and bird eggs in-game? Just as Zhou Wen was thinking about how to obtain the bird eggs, he heard a commotion outside. Zhou Wen originally didn't wish to care about what was happening outside, but when he heard Li Xian call his name, he had no choice but to open the door. Immediately, he saw Li Xian standing outside the yard. There were quite a number of people around him. Most of them were special admissions students of Four Seasons Garden. Even Wang Lu was among them. They surrounded Li Xian and were talking about something. As for Li Xian, he had a smug look on his face. Beside him was a beautiful companion beast wearing a leaf robe and holding a wooden bow. It had a pair of wings on its back and pointed ears. Zhou Wen, what do you think of my newly obtained elf companion beast? It's an authentic elf archer produced in the West District's Forest of Life. Although it's only at the legendary stage, it's much more expensive than the typical epic stage. Furthermore, due to its scarcity, you might not be able to buy it even if you have the money, Li Xian flaunted. The special admissions students beside him wore looks of envy as though they agreed with Li Xian's words. What special abilities does she have? Zhou Wen felt that typical legendary companion beasts were useless to him unless they had special abilities. There's no need for such a pet to have any abilities. All you need to do is keep it by your side and watch it, Li Xian said. Many students beside him nodded in agreement. Then, they felt that Li Xian was right. If there's nothing else, I'll head back to game. Zhou Wen couldn't tell what was the point of having such a companion beast. Li Xian hurriedly followed and entered the building with Zhou Wen. Old Zhou, this thing is just a decoration. It's indeed useless. However, a batch of supreme-grade companion eggs has been brought to Luoyang recently. This elf archer is only one of them. It's a gift from them. They invited our Li family to participate in the companion egg auction. Are you interested in joining us? Li Xian said. I don't have any money. What can I do if I go? I'll just game at home. Zhou Wen shook his head. Don't. Accompany me around. Just treat it as broadening your horizons. After all, it's very rare to see companion beasts in the West District here. I heard that there are dragons, angels, devils, and some elemental companion eggs, Li Xian added. I'm not going. Zhou Wen rejected him directly. Don't be so heartless. At most, I'll pay you an appearance fee. Li Xian knew that Zhou Wen lacked money, so he tempted him. However, Zhou Wen's lack of money was a matter of the past. Now that he had invested enough money, his need for money wasn't that high. Why do you insist on dragging me along? Zhou Wen asked. Li Xian chuckled in embarrassment. The last time I bought Thunder God General, you were with me and helped me make the decision. That's how I had such good luck. This time, I'll definitely get a few more companion beasts. I'll feel more at ease if you come with me. Do you think I'm a mascot? I don't have that ability. If you really want to get lucky, it's best you invite Wang Lu along. Zhou Wen rolled his eyes at him. Upon hearing Wang Lu's name, Li Xian said gloomily, Wang Lu will also participate, but she's buying a companion egg for herself. We can be considered competitors. Come with me. I won't make you come for nothing. If you like any companion beast later, as long as it's not too expensive, I'll bid for it for you as a fee. Chapter 305. Zhou Wen didn't accept the fee, but he still agreed to participate in the auction with Li Xian. And the place where the companion egg was being auctioned was the Xiyuan Crystal Shop. Qin Xiyuan's shop? When Zhou Wen thought of the shop, he immediately thought of the mysterious number and the locked companion beast. He originally imagined that he would get an answer after rescuing the former principal, but to his surprise, he didn't find the former principal in the ruined battlefield. The Yin family had already sent many experts into the temple to search. From time to time, Ansheng would inform him of the progress. According to Ansheng, there seemed to be some problems with the temple. According to an ancient architect's deduction, according to the layout of the temple, the part they had arrived at was likely the front temple. There was likely an inner temple behind it. The former principal and company were probably trapped in the inner temple. However, they hadn't found a way to enter the inner temple. The research was still ongoing. Zhou also wanted to enter the temple in-game, but unfortunately, he couldn't pass through the underground sea. He couldn't reach the temple. I should advance to the epic stage first. Zhou couldn't find any bird eggs in-game, so he had to think of a solution himself. In the reeds outside Pool City, there were some low-level bird-type dimensional creatures. Zhou caught a few alive and hung them on the stone railings of the poison WYRM pool to bleed them. This move was really effective. Soon, the poison WYRM pool bubbled. As for the avian dimensional creatures, they were trembling as though they were extremely afraid. Whoosh! The surface of the water suddenly exploded as a dimensional creature that looked like a snake or a dragon extended half of its body out of the poison pool. It opened its mouth and sucked at the birds that were bleeding, sucking them into its mouth. Calling it a snake, it had claws. Calling it a dragon, it had no horns on its head. It looked very odd. Zhou wasn't in the mood to console it. He got Banana Fairy to blow a gust of Grand Een wind. The violent and cold Grand Een wind swept up the poison WYRM and large amounts of poisonous water, freezing it in midair. Bam! The frozen poison WYRM fell out of the poison WYRM pool and landed on the square. If it were an ordinary epic creature, they would have long been frozen to death. However, this poison WYRM didn't die, but it was frozen stiff. It fell to the ground, unable to move. Zhou stabbed the poison WRM a few times with his overlord spear, stabbing it to death. It's not as powerful as the legends make it out to be? Zhou felt that the strategies were a little exaggerated. It was rather easy to kill the poison WRM. However, he didn't think about it. How many people in the world had a mythical banana fairy? Without her, how could he have killed the poison WRM so easily? Ding! The poison WYRM's body exploded as a crystal dropped. When Zhou looked at it, he saw that it was a crystal with the poison WRM's shadow inside. It was clearly a skill crystal. My luck is here. Zhou was overjoyed as he hurriedly got the blood-colored avatar to pick up the crystal. Poison Serpent Crystal, 21 Strength, 14 Poison Attribute. The system gave a notification. Zhou's stats happened to meet the requirement. He still had plenty of poison stats, so he chose to absorb it. The poison WYRM crystal transformed into wisps of black gas that fused into the blood-colored avatar's body. At the same time, Zhou felt a numbing and painful aura circulate in his body. It was so painful that he nearly cried out. After a while, that feeling gradually disappeared, and a new vital energy cycle formed in his body. Absorbed poison WYRM crystal and learned epic primordial energy skill, Poison Dragon Finger. It's not the dragon transformation art? Zhou felt depressed. It wasn't the dragon transformation art he needed. He had never heard of any uses for the Poison Dragon Finger, but on careful look, it was just a rank 1 skill. Zhou tried the Poison Dragon Finger. When he used it, his left middle finger turned black. Apart from that, there didn't seem to be any other changes. There was no powerful finger beam or explosive power. It looked ordinary, making it hard to believe that it was an epic primordial energy skill. Isn't this a little too weak? Do I have to use my fingers to directly touch my opponent? It's already an epic primordial energy skill, but it's still so low-end? Zhou tapped the stone railing with his finger and realized that not only did it look ordinary, but its actual effects weren't special either. The strength augmentation was very low, not much stronger than the great strength Vajra finger at the mortal stage. It was really incomparable to its epic stage status. Since the Poison Dragon Finger has the word poison in it, it should be winning with poison, right? I'll find a living creature to try it out later. Zhouwen could only console himself as he exited the underground Pool City dungeon and switched to the Zhuolu battlefield. Not long after, Zhouwen encountered a Qi this time. Zhouwen specially used the poison dragon finger to deal with the Qi. However, after hitting the Qi, it was unharmed. There was only a black spot the size of a fingertip on its body. Zhouwen originally hoped that the black spot would have some special changes, such as directly festering and poisoning the Qi to death. Therefore, he stared at the black spot on the Qi's body eagerly. However, to his surprise, the black spot vanished not long after. It had actually vanished just like that. As for the Qi, it was still alive and well, completely fine. As if I'd believe you! Zhouwen was rendered completely speechless. To think such a primordial energy skill was worthy of being called epic. It was an insult to the word epic. Zhouwen had no choice but to grind the baby tiger and the underground sea. After successfully sending himself to his death, he entered the underground Pool City to grind the poison WRM. He swore he wouldn't stop until he obtained the dragon transformation art. With experience, he knew how to lure the poison WRM out, making it much easier to kill it. There were no absolutely invincible dimensional creatures in this world. Even a companion beast like Banana Fairy, which had a mythical foundation, could be cracked as long as one knew her characteristic. The principle of mutually reinforcing and restraining each other was very useful in battles between companion beasts and dimensional creatures. It was unknown if Zhouwen's luck had really changed recently, but after killing the poison WRM again, another primordial energy skill crystal dropped. It left Zhouwen in disbelief. Heavens bless me! It should be the dragon transformation art this time, right? Zhouwen hurriedly got the blood-colored avatar to pick up the poison WRM crystal. The absorption conditions were the same as before. There were strength and poison stat requirements. After the blood-colored avatar absorbed the poison WRM crystal, the system gave him a notification. Absorbed poison WRM crystal. Attained poison dragon finger 2. F***CK your sister, there's even a sequel? Zhouwen felt like he was about to explode. He had actually obtained 2 such weak primordial energy skills in a row. He didn't know if he was lucky or unlucky. With things having developed to this point, Zhouwen had no other choice. After failing to grind the baby tiger, he headed to the underground sea to snatch the dragon pearl. After successfully sending himself to his death, he returned to the poison WRM pool to grind the poison WRM. Ding! With a crisp sound, another primordial energy skill crystal dropped. Chapter 306. Absorbed poison WRM crystal. Attained poison dragon finger 4. Upon seeing the notification that popped up in-game, Zhouwen felt unwell. This poison WRM was truly poisonous. It kept dropping poison dragon finger. What the hell is this? Zhouwen had no choice but to take the poison dragon finger seriously. The poison dragon finger primordial energy skill had dropped 3 times in a row. Zhouwen didn't believe that it was a coincidence. After carefully studying the skill, he realized that the 3 skills of the poison dragon finger didn't overlap. They were 3 skills. The poison dragon finger that didn't have a label in the beginning was likely one. When used, the left middle finger would turn black. When used 2 and 4, the index and ring fingers would turn black. Could it be that there are 5 types of poison dragon finger, corresponding to the 5 fingers? However, the effects of the poison dragon finger are so weak. Even if I use all 5 fingers, it probably won't be of much use, right? Zhouwen was somewhat interested. He wanted to know if gathering all 5 poison dragon fingers would increase the might of the poison dragon finger. After all, the current poison dragon finger didn't live up to its title as an epic skill. Zhouwen now felt that the poison dragon finger wasn't that simple. Zhouwen went to the school's information network to search for information on the poison WRM, mainly to see what it dropped. There was relatively little information on this. Only the tutor who had previously written an article about luring the poison WRM had mentioned that the poison dragon finger would drop. However, the poison dragon finger was extremely weak, inferior to the typical legendary skill. It wasn't worth practicing. However, he didn't find any information on the dragon transformation art. Without any information, Zhou could only continue grinding. However, after killing the poison WRM 3 times, only a strength crystal dropped. No skills dropped, much less a companion egg. The dragon transformation art is so rare. I wonder who had it drop in the past. Zhou had no choice but to patiently grind. The bat cave dropped the most items, but there weren't many that were useful. The best was naturally the white shadow of poison companion egg. Unfortunately, Zhou only had 1 drop. After killing the white shadow of poison several times, no companion eggs dropped. Next was the primordial energy skill crystal, followed by the poison stat crystal. Apart from that, the bat cave had a special use. It was to help Zhou hatch epic companion eggs. As Zhou didn't have enough primordial energy, he couldn't incubate an epic companion egg. Furthermore, there were too many bats in the bat cave. After killing them in large numbers, they would drop quite a number of primordial energy crystals. These primordial energy crystals with values ranging from 21 to 36 would drop at least 7 or 8 from grinding the bat cave. With the help of these high-level primordial energy crystals and the primordial energy recovery ability of his Dao body, Zhou could barely hatch an epic companion egg. Zhou had used this method to hatch the mutated stone chi now. The mutated stone chi had transformed into a grayish-white stone armor that the blood-colored avatar wore. The armor was very unique. It was a full-body armor. The grayish-white stone enveloped the blood-colored avatar from head to toe. Furthermore, it was different from the crudeness Zhou had imagined. The stone armor formed by the mutated stone chi was extremely exquisite. It wasn't inferior to the steel armor forged by exquisite craftsmanship. It was even better than the artistry. After the blood-colored avatar wore the stone armor, it looked like a stone statue. Its face was a hideous mask of a monster, making it look extremely ferocious and ruthless. On the back of the armor, there was a black dragon-shaped emblem. The dragon's shape was rather abstract, preventing one from seeing its full appearance. However, the dragon's domineering aura seemed to leap out, as though it could come to life at any moment. After testing the stone chi's armor's defense, it could only be described as strong. The poison beam of an ordinary epic poison bat was unable to leave a mark on the stone armor. Even the white shadow of poison's poison beam and poison claw could only leave a few shallow marks on the stone armor, unable to penetrate it. Furthermore, the stone armor had powerful self-recovery abilities. It could basically repair itself as long as it wasn't completely destroyed on the spot. What a good item! Zhou imagined that such a good armor might be able to help him withstand the Black Dragon's attack, but when he tried it in the underground sea, the stone armor and the blood-colored avatar were swallowed. To the Black Dragon, it didn't make much of a difference. At most, it was a little harder to chew. It was useless against those terrifying true dragons. However, the stone armor was an excellent grade defensive pet at the epic stage. Zhou liked it very much. The mutated stone chi was rather powerful in battle. It was about the same as the mutated stone chi Zhou had killed. It was an excellent grade pet with both offense and defense. After hatching the mutated stone chi, Zhou took out the mutated sword fang companion egg and hatched it using the same method. Mutated sword fang fish. Epic life providence. Fish of sword comprehension life soul. Sword flash fish strength. 39 speed. 37 constitution. 38 primordial energy. 35 talent skill. Fang wheel sword flash companion form. Sword. Although it only had 1 skill, the mutated sword Fang Fish's stats were just too good. It was outstanding in every aspect. None of its stats were lower than 35. It could be considered an excellent grade epic pet. The only regret was that the mutated sword fang fish was a water elemental creature. It could only move freely in water. Its mobility on land was greatly reduced, making it useless. However, that didn't matter. If there was no water, Zhouwen could use it as a sword. The sword formed by the sword fang fish had its own sword beam. It was much more convenient to use than the Overlord's spear. It was also stronger, but it didn't have the ever-victorious skill. He took the mutated sword fang fish to the underground sea, hoping to use its speed in water to snatch the dragon pearl. However, it was still swallowed by the black dragon without any room for resistance. From the looks of it, it's not enough to rely on pets. I have to quickly raise my strength. Zhouwen gritted his teeth and continued grinding the poison WRM, hoping to grind the dragon transformation art as soon as possible. When it was time to meet Li Xian, Zhouwen applied for leave and went to the auction with him. Zhouwen was already rather familiar with the Xiuan crystal shop, but when he came with Li Xian today, there were more people than the previous few times. The people who came were basically middle-aged and elderly. There were also young people, but not many. Apart from Li Xian, Zhouwen didn't see anyone familiar. Wang Lu didn't seem to be here either. Third brother, aren't you going to introduce your friend to me? Just as Zhouwen and Li Xian arrived at the venue, they saw a young man walk over. Although Zhouwen didn't know the young man who walked over, he could guess that this person was likely Li Xian's second brother, the man who had tried to kill him many times. Chapter 307. Formal attire like a suit and white shirt would give an ordinary person a formal feeling, but when worn by the young man in front of him, he seemed very natural and unrestrained. It was as though it was only natural for him to wear these clothes. He had an indescribable unique charm. Zhouwen sized him up. A man in his 20s was so handsome that it left others envious. His every move was filled with charm, enough to move any woman's heart. Seeing Li Xian look at him coldly without any intention of introducing him, the man smiled and extended his hand to Zhouwen. "Hello, my name is Li Xiubai. My courtesy name is Ma Bai. Everyone close to me calls me Ma Bai. You are third brother's friend, so you can also call me Ma Bai." Zhouwen, Li Xian's friend. Zhouwen extended his hand and shook it. After releasing it, he simply said one sentence. The last 5 words directly told Li Xiubai that he was on the same side as Li Xian and that he wouldn't be friends with Li Xiubai. Li Xiubai didn't mind as he said with a smile, "Third brother's friend is naturally my friend. If there's a chance in the future, get to know me better. You will slowly understand me. There's no rush to make a conclusion. I have friends over there. You guys chat first." Seeing Li Xiubai leave, Li Xian curled his lips and said, "He's always a refined person in front of others, but he's capable of doing anything behind the scenes." Zhouwen glanced at Li Xiubai and felt that Li Xian's second brother was a little terrifying. He had schemed to kill Li Xian, but in front of others, he could still act like a good brother. Furthermore, he didn't show any emotional changes. If Zhouwen didn't know the inside story, he would probably believe that he and Li Xian were good brothers who had a good relationship. Li Xiubai is really a little terrifying. "It's no wonder you can't beat him," Zhouwen said to Li Xian. "What do you mean I can't beat him? I just didn't want to compete with him in the past, but it's different now. In the future, he won't be able to take advantage of me," Li Xian said with a curl of his lips. Zhouwen shook his head slightly. Li Xian's words had already exposed his weakness. Even though Li Xiubai had treated him in such a manner, he had no intention of killing Li Xiubai. He just didn't want Li Xiubai to take advantage of him again. Such a harmless personality might be Li Xian's weakness, but it was precisely because of his personality that Zhouwen was willing to get close to him and befriend him. In the glass display cabinets in the exhibition hall, there were many companion eggs. These were all companion eggs that were being auctioned today. Anyone could take a careful look at them so that they could bid during the evening auction. However, it was difficult to tell if a companion egg was good or bad. Furthermore, the tempered glass barrier blocked the companion egg's aura, making it even harder to tell if it was good or bad. Have you chosen a target? Zhou asked Li Xian. Yes, I want to bid for number 47's Holy Sword Angel. What do you think? Li Xian led Zhou to the glass cover with the number 47 and pointed at a companion egg inside. As Zhou used his phone to take a picture of the companion egg, he asked, "What are the characteristics of the Holy Sword Angel?" Li Xian explained the details of the Holy Sword Angel to Zhou before asking, "How about 2 million? During the auction, I intend to buy this one for 2 million. What do you think?" "I don't think this one is good. It's best you change it," Zhou said after some thought. He saw that the Holy Sword Angel's stats were only average. Although they weren't bad, they weren't considered good either. They didn't have a complete set of skills and were far from excellent grade. "Then which one do you think is good?" "I want one that looks good. Help me choose one from here." Li Xian pointed at the few companion eggs in the catalog for Zhou to see. The few companion eggs in the catalog hatched companion beasts like angels, fairies, and demonesses. Furthermore, their prices were rather ridiculous. Their abilities were only average, so it was unknown why Li Xian had bought them. However, since Li Xian wanted one, Zhou helped him take a look. There were a few with rather good stats, especially an epic companion egg named Spirit Siphoning Demoness. The 4 basic stats exceeded the upper limit given by the information. Furthermore, it was a pet with 4 full skills. It could be said to be excellent grade. Zhou secretly told Li Xian that he could bid for the Spirit Siphoning Demoness with all his might. Li Xian trusted Zhou very much. Since Zhou said that he wanted to buy the Spirit Siphoning Demoness, he didn't look at the other companion eggs. "Zhou, we agreed that you should pick one for yourself. Treat it as payment for your hard work," Li Xian said to Zhou. "Don't talk so much nonsense with me. I'm done with what needs to be done. I'll walk around. Take a look for yourself." Zhou wanted to go to basement 4 to take a look at the locked companion beast. He had a nagging feeling that the companion beast had something to do with the password the former principal had sent him. "Just pick. What's with all the hassle? Walk around after you're done." Li Xian forcefully pulled Zhou around. As he walked, he said, "What's wrong with this nightmare demoness? Her figure is really hot." Zhou didn't know what Li Xian was thinking all day. He remembered that the invincible connate divine art he cultivated didn't allow him to lose his virginity. Once he lost his virginity, he would lose his cultivation. He wasn't afraid of losing his cultivation by looking at so many things all day. Since Li Xian insisted on giving it to him, Zhou wanted to choose a cheaper one. After flipping through the catalog, the cheapest one was priced at 100,000. Furthermore, there were some inconspicuous legendary companion eggs. For example, goblins and swamp monsters were considered ordinary legendary companion eggs in the West District. Yet, they could be sold for more than 100,000. It could only be said that the rarer something was, the greater its value. After all, the East District didn't have such companion beasts. As he strolled around, he would occasionally use his phone to take a look. As others were also using their phones to take photos, Zhou actions weren't out of the ordinary. As Zhou was looking, he was suddenly taken aback. He couldn't help but stop in his tracks and look at the booth beside him. There was a companion egg inside the glass cover. The card beside it had the words Minotaur, but the information he saw on his phone wasn't about a Minotaur. Zhou carefully looked at the information on the card. It was written that it was a legendary Minotaur. It was produced in a dimensional zone called the Underground Maze in the West District. It was good at using huge axes, and its constitution and strength were very good. However, the information Zhou saw on his phone was completely different from the information on the card. This companion egg labeled as a Minotaur was displayed on the phone as Tyrant Behemoth, and its level was only at the mortal stage. However, behind the mortal stage, Zhou saw the familiar words, evolvable. No way? Could it be that this is a mythical companion beast that can match Banana Fairy? That shouldn't be the case. Those who can do the companion egg business are all experts, especially at such a large auction. There will definitely be many experts cross-checking and confirming it. How can they make a mistake between a Minotaur companion egg and a Tyrant Behemoth companion egg? Zhou found it unbelievable, but the information on his phone clearly showed that it was a Tyrant Behemoth companion egg. Chapter 308. Even if he wanted to make a mistake, he had to have a chance to do so. Mythical companion eggs were just too rare. If someone really obtained such a companion egg, would they put it together with other companion eggs to make a mistake? In any case, if it were Zhou, he definitely wouldn't make a mistake. No matter how I made a mistake, since there's such a good thing, it'd be a waste not to take it. Zhou pointed at the companion egg with the Minotaur's name and said to Li Xian, I want this. Minotaur? I say, old Zhou, your taste is a little heavy. You don't want so many companion eggs, but you chose such an ugly thing. Even if you want to help me save money, you shouldn't be so frugal, right? How about this? I'll make the decision. I'll film a female nightmare for you tonight. I guarantee you won't regret it, Li Xian said after looking at the introduction on the name card. No, I want this. If you don't do it, I'll do it myself tonight, Zhou said. You sure are strange. You don't want so many beautiful companion beasts, but you insist on such an ugly thing. Forget it. As long as you like it, Li Xian said helplessly. After all, Zhou had always been this strange, so he wasn't surprised by it. Zhou, Li Xian, the two of you came early. Wang Lu walked over and stood in front of the two of them. Wang Lu, don't you think this punk Zhou is strange? He has so many beautiful companion beasts, and insists on choosing an ugly Minotaur, Li Xian said to Wang Lu with a smile. What Minotaur? Wang Lu asked. Li Xian pointed at the display cabinet beside him. Wang Lu looked over and saw that the item number was 107. She revealed a look of surprise and asked Zhou, you want to buy this companion egg? Yes. Zhou's heart skipped a beat as he felt something amiss. What a coincidence. Wang Lu reached into her pocket and took out a note. She opened it and handed it to Zhou. What's this? Li Xian stretched his head over to look at the note curiously. He saw the number 107 written on it. Wang Lu said with a smile, I didn't want to come, but the host of this auction is an old friend of my family's elders. I'm the only one in Luoyang, so I had no choice but to attend. I didn't plan on buying any companion beasts, so I couldn't be bothered to look at them. I casually wrote a number. When the auction begins tonight, I'll bid for a companion beast with this number. It'll be a show of respect to the auction's host. Li Xian found it a coincidence when he heard that, but Zhou was alarmed. Wang Lu's luck was just too good. She had actually managed to get a mythical companion beast. She was practically a human-shaped lucky cat. Don't tell me you plan on bidding for this Minotaur? Li Xian said to the two of them. Since both of them had chosen the Minotaur, if they were to fight, it would only benefit the seller. They were all classmates and had a good relationship, so there was no need to fight. Wang Lu looked at Zhou and said, I have no intention of giving up. What about you? Me too, Zhou said. I really don't understand you. What's there to fight over for a Minotaur? There are plenty of such things in the West District. If you really want one, I'll get someone to get a few for you later. There's no need to hurt the friendship between classmates over such a thing, Li Xian said to smooth things over. I never change my mind on things I've decided on. However, Li Xian is right. There's no need to hurt the friendship between classmates over a companion egg. Let's do this. I'll bid for this companion egg. Zhou, you can bid for another companion egg. After the auction, we'll exchange it. It'll be considered a mutual gift. This way, I won't change my decision and you will get the companion egg you want. Is that fair? Wang Lu said after some thought. Fair. Zhou nodded in agreement. He felt that if he really competed with Wang Lu, it was unlikely he could beat her. This was for the best. Be it wealth or luck, Zhou was far from Wang Lu's match. I'm going to greet the main family. See you at the auction tonight. A waiter came to invite Wang Lu, so she had no choice but to leave. Zhou continued looking at the companion eggs in the exhibition hall. Although Wang Lu was willing to exchange them, Zhou still felt a little uncomfortable. He thought that he couldn't reject a mythical companion beast, but he should at least try his best to find a good companion beast for Wang Lu. In a private room on the top floor of the Xiuan store, a middle-aged man carefully knocked on the door. When the door opened a crack, he immediately entered the room. In the private room, an old man sat on the sofa and asked as he smoked, "Have you done what I asked you to do?" "Sir, it's all done. I've already swapped the companion egg. As long as you bid for that companion egg at the auction, you can take it away without anyone noticing. The Zhang family definitely won't be able to find out in a short period of time," the middle-aged man who had just entered said nervously. "Well done. What's the serial number of that companion egg?" The old man put down his cigarette as his eyes shimmered with a fiery glint. "Sir, you promised me that as long as I did this well, you would restore my freedom and send me home at sea," the middle-aged man said to the old man, his tone a little flustered. "I'll naturally do what I promised you," the old man said with a frown. "I've been in the Zhang family for so many years, and it wasn't easy for me to get to where I am today. Now that I've done such a thing and the Zhang family finds out, there's definitely no way for me to survive. This is all to carry out your orders, sir. Sir, you have to keep your promise and send me home at sea." The middle-aged man's eyes were bloodshot as he clenched his fists nervously. "I said that I'll definitely do what I promised. Don't worry." "What's the serial number of that companion egg?" The old man stared at him coldly and asked again. 107. Number 107. That companion egg is extremely similar to the Minotaur companion egg. I used some tricks on the companion egg. Even those appraisal experts wouldn't be able to tell if they didn't know beforehand. Furthermore, no one would pay special attention to a Minotaur companion egg. Just as the middle-aged man finished speaking, a ghost-like figure of light appeared behind the old man. The figure of light spat out a cloud of smoke at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man didn't even have time to react before the smoke enveloped his body. Soon, the smoke swirled back. When it landed between the old man's fingers, it had already turned into a cigarette. The old man struck a match and lit the cigarette. He took a deep puff before exhaling a mouthful of smoke. He said indifferently, "Don't worry. I'll scatter your ashes into the sea. You can consider it as going home." Zhou circled the exhibition hall for quite a while, but he failed to find a companion beast that he was satisfied with. It was either too expensive or too poor. He couldn't afford it if it was too expensive, but he felt apologetic if it was too poor. Seeing that he was about to finish looking at the companion eggs, Zhou couldn't help but be taken aback when there was only one companion egg left. Chapter 309. Four-leaf clover, legendary life providence, lucky grass strength, 0 speed, 0 constitution, 3 primordial energy, 20 talent skill, exorcism companion form, hair clip. This was the information that Zhou had seen. The name on the card was 3-leaf clover. It was said that it was a plant-type companion beast that had the effect of comforting and stimulating one's mind. However, according to the information that Zhou had seen on his phone, it was a 4-leaf clover. Although its stats were very weak and could be said to be trash at the legendary stage, exorcism was a relatively common skill in the West. Furthermore, it was a passive skill, so it wasn't very useful. On the whole, the 4-leaf clover looked ordinary and nothing worth paying attention to. However, its Lucky Grass Life Providence surprised Zhou Wen. Lucky Grass Life Providence. Luck plus 3. It was a simple and direct introduction. Zhou Wen had seen such an introduction before Wang Fei's baby tiger hatched. However, the baby tiger's luck was plus 5, 2 points higher than the lucky grass. This was understandable. After all, the baby tiger was at the epic stage, while the four-leaf clover was only at the legendary stage. Wang Lu's luck is really impressive. I'll take it. Zhou Wen decided to bid for the four-leaf clover companion egg. The luck stat was just too rare. Too many people wanted it, so Zhou Wen naturally wanted it too. However, this was probably Wang Lu's luck. If he had taken Tyrant Behemoth, the four-leaf clover would have been Wang Lu's. He couldn't force it. Furthermore, Zhou Wen felt that a hair clip wasn't suitable for him. Many people knew Li Xian. Li Xian had gone to socialize, and Zhou Wen didn't like socializing, so he went to basement 4 to take a look at the locked companion beast. However, Zhou Wen soon realized that apart from the independent elevator he had taken previously, there was no other way to basement 4. And the elevator he had taken previously was closed and couldn't be opened. Zhou Wen was puzzled. So many tycoons from Luoyang and the surrounding areas had come today. There were even tycoons from other places who had specially come to participate in the auction. Yet, they didn't open basement 4 to sell the pets. Instead, they sealed it. Qin Shiyuan's actions were somewhat strange. He found an attendant and asked a few questions. The attendant only said that basement 4 required the boss's accompaniment. They had no way of taking Zhou Wen down. Zhou Wen had no choice but to give up on the idea of heading down. He circled the other floors of the shop. The Shiyuan shop lived up to its reputation as an old shop in Luoyang. There were plenty of crystals and companion eggs, and there were quite a number of new products. It was obvious that Qin Shiyuan had many connections. When the auction was about to begin, Li Xian brought Zhou Wen to a private room on the second floor. Wang Lu was already waiting inside. It's all thanks to Wang Lu this time. Otherwise, young people like us wouldn't have been able to get a private room today. Li Xian grinned as he sat on the sofa. Wang Lu smiled and said, "This room wasn't prepared for me. It's for the sake of my family's elders. I'm just a representative." After the three of them chatted for a while, the auction began. The first items to be auctioned were the legendary companion eggs. They were considered desserts before the main course. Finally, the epic items were the main course. The legendary companion beasts started at 100,000. Their quality was much worse than the batch Zhou Wen had obtained previously. However, those who could participate in the auction didn't care about such a tiny amount of money. They were just buying something they liked. There were no unsold auctions, but the prices weren't high. The highest one was sold at 230,000. Only then did Zhou Wen realize that the numbers were originally auctioned in reverse. The higher the number, the earlier the auction was. The 13th item was the Minotaur number 107. It was also starting at 100,000. Wang Lu calmly pressed the button on the auction device and successfully raised the price to 110,000. As the room was independently sealed and had a one-way glass, it wasn't like the hall below where one could see it with a raise of one's hand. Therefore, a bidding device was needed. Otherwise, the auctioneer wouldn't know that someone was bidding in the room. There were two people who were interested in the Minotaur. Soon, they raised the price to 160,000. Then, Wang Lu raised the price again, raising it to 170,000. The two bidders on the first floor had already given up. Wang Lu originally thought that she could win it, but she never expected someone to raise the price to 200,000. A Minotaur being auctioned for 200,000 was already an astronomical price. The other party looked determined to win the Minotaur. From the looks of it, someone wants to compete with you. Your family doesn't have enemies in Luoyang, right? Li Xian said with a smile. Wang Lu shook her head and raised the price again, raising it to 210,000. It's so tiring to raise it by 10,000. Let's just raise it by 300,000. Let's see if he still raises it, Li Xian said like a tycoon. Money has to be used sparingly. Every bit counts, Wang Lu said with a smile. At that moment, in another room, an old man who was smoking frowned. He originally believed that it wouldn't be a problem to win the companion egg for 200,000, but he never expected someone to bid. Could it be that the news was leaked? Or did that fellow have a backup plan? The old man pondered for a moment and felt that both were possible, but it didn't seem like it. He couldn't figure out the reason for a moment. Seeing that no one was bidding, and that the auctioneer was already shouting 210,000 once, the old man decided to bid first. Spending money was a trivial matter as long as he could win the companion egg. Unwilling to be too ostentatious, the old man planned on adding 10,000 to test the other party's reaction. However, when he pressed his finger on the bidding device, it didn't react. It was as though it was broken. The old man couldn't help but be taken aback. He hurriedly extended his finger and pressed it a few times, but there was no reaction at all. It was as though it was really broken. Sweat immediately seeped out of his forehead as he kept pressing, but there was still no reaction. 210,000 thrice. Sold. The auctioneer was already satisfied that the Minotaur had reached 210,000. He shouted especially quickly. The old man in the room was already infuriated. He had planned everything and arranged everything, but he never expected it to be broken by a bidding device. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. He called the staff over and scolded them. However, when the staff went forward to check the bidding device, they realized that all the buttons were normal. There was nothing wrong with them. They tried using it a few times and found it to be usable. "Sir, were you too agitated just now? There were some deviations in the operation?" the staff member said with an extremely good attitude. The old man wished he could immediately turn the few staff members in front of him into cigarettes, but this was Luoyang. If he did that, he would definitely be targeted. Furthermore, it wouldn't solve any problems. Who won lot 107? The old man could only hold back his anger and ask. "Sir, I'm sorry. Unless the customer is willing to make it public, we need to keep the customer's information confidential," the staff member said with a slight bow. The old man held back and didn't flare up. All he did was get the staff members to leave as his expression changed. He didn't know if the failure of the bidding device was a coincidence or if he had already been targeted. If he had been targeted, he would be in danger. Chapter 310. Zhouwen couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he saw that Wang Lu had finally bid for Tyrant Behemoth. Such a companion beast that had a chance of advancing to the mythical stage in the future was just too precious. There was nowhere to grind it in-game. It wasn't like ordinary pets that could be grinded casually. As long as he had the time, he would be able to grind them. There probably wouldn't be a second chance like this. Soon, a staff member brought the auction item over. After Wang Lu confirmed that the auction item was correct, she paid with her card and obtained the Tyrant Behemoth companion egg. Wang Lu held the companion egg with both hands and turned to Zhouwen. Zhouwen extended his hand to take it, but to his surprise, Wang Lu retracted her hand. She hugged the companion egg and smiled at Zhouwen. "Since it's an exchange, where's your companion egg?" "The companion egg I chose hasn't been auctioned yet," Zhouwen said. "Then I'll wait until you get the companion egg." Wang Lu hugged the companion egg and sat back on the sofa. Zhouwen wasn't in a hurry as he waited for the auction to continue. After a few more items, he finally saw the four-leaf clover being auctioned. There were relatively few people bidding for the four-leaf clover. According to the information on the card, the four-leaf clover didn't have any combat strength. It was basically a supplementary item that cleared one's mind. Its effects were probably not much different from Essential Bomb, so not many people were interested in it. Only one person made a bid. Zhouwen bought the four-leaf clover at a price of 130,000. "I'll hand over the money." Wang Lu held the companion egg in one hand and extended her other hand in front of Zhouwen. All right. Zhouwen placed the four-leaf clover companion egg in Wang Lu's hand before taking the tyrant behemoth companion egg. I finally got it. Zhouwen held the tyrant behemoth companion egg in excitement. This was the hope of advancing to the mythical stage in the future. A dimensional creature like a behemoth was a terrifying existence in Western mythology. Legend had it that it could devour 1,000 mountains. Due to its immense appetite, God had originally created a pair of behemoths, but he was afraid that they would reproduce and devour the entire world. Therefore, he killed the female behemoth, leaving only the male behemoth. Legends were legends after all, but Tyrant Behemoth stats clearly indicated that it was indeed extraordinary. Tyrant Behemoth, mortal, evolvable, strength, 11 speed, 11 constitution, 11 essence energy, 11 innate skill, mountain devourer companion form, boxing glove. Just like Banana Fairy, it had a single skill. This left Zhouwen somewhat depressed. The companion form was a boxing glove. He would only know what it would look like after it hatched. The auction continued. In the end, Li Xian won the epic spirit drawing Demonis for 3.2 million. It was much more expensive than the market price, making him feel the pinch. However, Li Xian still firmly bought it. Once the auction ended, he couldn't wait to return. He planned on thinking of a way to hatch the spirit drawing Demonis. I know there's a dessert shop nearby that has pretty good dessert. Do you want to have some before school? Wang Lu asked Zhouwen after leaving the Xiuan shop. You go ahead. I don't like sweet things. Zhouwen really didn't eat sweets. Furthermore, he was in a hurry to return and hatch Tyrant Behemoth. He really wasn't in the mood to eat. After waving his hand as a farewell, Zhouwen summoned his mutated lotus flower ant and rode it all the way back to school. He's really not a gentleman at all. There's something wrong with his head. Drive, Wang Lu said angrily as she ordered the driver to drive to the dessert shop. After the car left, an old man walked out from a nearby alley. He looked in the direction where the car had left with a complicated look in his eyes. Someone from the Wang family bought that companion egg? From the looks of it, things have indeed changed. I'm afraid that fellow leaked the news. The old man felt that he was in a very dangerous situation. He had to leave immediately, otherwise the Wang family might silence him. After all, it was the Zhang family's mythical companion egg. The Hero King's family wasn't that easily provoked. In order not to provoke the Zhang family, the Wang family might very well eliminate everyone who knew. That darn Wang family. I'm screwed this time. The old man didn't dare stay any longer as he sneaked into the darkness and headed into the distance. He was in a tense state as he constantly paid attention to his surroundings to prevent the Wang family from pursuing him at any moment. After Zhouwen returned to his dorm, he hatched Tyrant Behemoth. After all, it was only at the mortal stage. With Zhouwen's current primordial energy, hatching it was rather easy. Not long after, a tattoo that looked like a bull's head appeared on the back of Zhouwen's hand. It was completely black and looked like the silhouette of a bull's head. He summoned Tyrant Behemoth. He originally imagined that it would be a behemoth. After all, Behemoth was the largest creature in myths and legends. It was a terrifying existence that could devour 1,000 mountains. However, the tyrant in front of him was only half the height of a human. It had a bull's head and thick curved horns. Its body was like an ape's, and its claws were extremely sharp. The tail on its back was curled up, and its black fur was black and shiny like black silk. It looked a little like a minotaur, and it was a miniature version. After turning Tyrant Behemoth into a boxing glove, a black boxing glove immediately appeared on Zhouwen's right hand. Strangely, there were 2 horns at the front of the boxing glove. If Zhouwen wanted to punch someone, the front horns of the boxing glove would definitely touch the person first. This fellow is still at the mortal stage. No matter how strong it is, it can't be that strong. I wonder how long it will take to evolve to the level of Banana Fairy, Zhou thought. Soon, Zhou realized that Tyrant Behemoth was indeed worthy of being a legendary existence that ate 1,000 mountains. Banana Fairy, Truth Listener, and the other companion beasts that needed to be fed added up together, but they weren't as edible as Tyrant Behemoth. It hadn't been long since he fed it, but his phone would prompt him that Tyrant Behemoth was hungry again. Furthermore, it wasn't picky with food. Be it companion eggs or companion beasts, it could swallow them in one mouthful. Thankfully, Zhou could hunt a large number of epic poison bat. He got an epic poison bat companion egg to feed it, causing the system's notification to fall silent for a period of time. It can eat so much at such a young age. If it really evolves to the epic stage, can I afford to rear it? Zhou was already beginning to worry. Apart from studying at Wang Mingyuan's place, Zhou kept grinding every day. What he wanted the most was the lucky baby tiger and the poison WYRM's dragon transformation art. Then, he wanted the dragon pearl. Zhou, make a trip to my office. Wang Fei sent him a message. Zhou imagined that Wang Fei had finally convinced her family to let him learn the Wang family's movement technique, but to his surprise, he learned that the school had made him a tutor after meeting her. He was in charge of taking care of a student at Bright Prospects College. That student's life and studies at Sunset College for the next 3 months would be arranged by Zhou. Isn't this the responsibility of a tutor? Zhou asked in puzzlement. Don't forget that you are a student of Sunset College. To students from other colleges, you are qualified to be their tutors. The word tutor in front of a tutor isn't for nothing. Do well and don't embarrass Sunset College, Wang Fei said to Zhou with a serious expression. Zhou wanted to refuse, but Wang Fei told him that this was the school's decision. He couldn't question it unless he dropped out. Chapter 3:11. Dropping out was naturally just a joke. No one would drop out because of this. Furthermore, the school had corresponding rewards for support students. They could obtain passes to special dimensional zones. Although it was called tutoring, it was actually just a guide, allowing the Bright Prospects College students to quickly integrate into Sunset College's learning and life. After all, they would only be here for 3 months, unlike Zhou and company who could live and study here for 4 years. Everything could be taken slowly. The Bright Prospects College students who received one-on-one tutoring would enter the same tutor's class as the tutor. Their homework missions were naturally the same. The only mandatory mission was when doing homework missions. The tutor had to form a team with their tutor and be in charge of leading them to complete the homework missions. After Zhou saw what the tutors needed to do, he didn't think much of it. After all, it was just taking one more person for homework missions. It wasn't difficult. He usually had to do homework missions himself. When Zhou met the person, he realized that his one-on-one tutoring target was Ming Xiu. He was a handsome youth about his age. For some reason, Ming Xiu looked very radiant, but he was a little lazy, as though he wasn't interested in anything. The school had already assigned dorms to Ming Xiu and company, but Zhou needed to take them there and help them familiarize themselves with the school's situation. From Zhou point of view, these weren't troublesome matters. Although the school was huge, students like them usually went to only a few places. It would take them at most half a day to familiarize themselves with the place. After that, there was nothing for Zhou to do. When the homework missions were assigned, he just needed to bring Ming Xiu along. Although Zhou was learning from Wang Mingyuan, his tutor was still Wang Fei, so Ming Xiu's tutor was also Wang Fei. Ming Xiu, this is the key to your dorm. Shall I take you to your dorm first? After the school leader finished speaking, Zhou took Ming Xiu to his dorm and arranged for him to stay. Thank you. Just give me the key. We're all adults. I can handle such trivial matters. There's no need to trouble you, Ming Xiu said politely. That's fine too. This is my phone number. Call me if you need anything. Zhou gave him his dorm key and his phone number. Thank you. By the way, who was first in Sunset College's comprehensive test this year? Ming Xiu asked after taking the key and note. First? I remember it was Senior Wei Guo. Zhou Wen's memory wasn't bad, but that was only when it came to things he wanted to memorize. He never paid much attention to things he wasn't interested in. He really didn't pay much attention to who was first. After all, he was in the top 10. Wei Guo is the current student council president, right? Ming Xiu nodded as though he had heard of this person before. Yes, Zhou Wen answered. Do you know where to find him? Ming Xiu asked again. I really don't know about that. You can go to the student union activity room to take a look. Even if you can't find Senior Wei Guo, you can still find the backbone of the student union. Zhou Wen told Ming Xiu the location of the student union. Thanks. After thanking Zhou Wen again, Ming Xiu turned around and prepared to leave. Zhou Wen had no intention of stopping him. He felt gratified to see Ming Cheng's student being so independent. Furthermore, Ming Xiu was right. They were all adults, so they didn't need others to care about them. As long as they were willing to understand many things, there was no need for others to guide them. Sunset College's education policy was actually the same. It tried its best not to restrict the students' wishes and development. It only guided them in a direction and provided them with the knowledge and ability to learn. Whether they could learn and how much they could learn depended on the students themselves. Independence was a sign of whether a student could truly grow. After Ming Xiu left, Zhou Wen turned around and returned to his dorm. He hadn't grinded his dragon transformation art yet, so he needed to continue grinding dungeons. Furthermore, he still needed to learn from Wang Mingyuan. Ming Xiu walked to a trash can in the school. Without looking at the piece of paper, she folded it and placed it into a recyclable bin. Ming Xiu had no intention of coming to Sunset College to learn anything, nor did he need the company of a student counselor. Wei Guo had been in a rather good mood recently. He was originally worried that Zhou Wen would become the second Hui Haifeng, or even compete with him for the position of the next student council president. However, after some observation, he realized that Zhou Wen was similar to the other freaks in school. He wasn't interested in such matters at all. This made him feel very gratified. He usually didn't see Zhou Wen at all, nor did he participate in group activities. What was worse was that Zhou Wen often took leave to go out. Wei Guo had already automatically defined Zhou Wen as a rich and powerful scion. With Zhou Wen's personality, it was unlikely that he would compete with him for the position of student council president. Just as Wei Guo was studying a dimensional zone strategy, he heard the door to the activity room open. He looked up and couldn't help but frown slightly. He had a very good memory, especially when it came to faces. It could be said that he had a photographic memory, but he couldn't recall where he had seen the handsome boy in front of him. The exchange students from Bright Prospects College will be arriving today. This boy should be one of them, right? On second thought, Wei Guo guessed Ming Xiu's origins. At the same time, he thought to himself, what's a new exchange student doing here at the student council instead of going to the dormitory? Hello, I'm Wei Guo, the president of the student council. Is there anything I can help you with? Wei Guo said amiably to Ming Xiu, as though he was a leader greeting the poor in the countryside. In Wei Ji's heart, Bright Prospects College was a third-rate college. The students of Bright Prospects College weren't much different from the poor. Getting them to study at Sunset College was helping the poor. Ming Xiu looked at Wei Guo and said, "You're the student council president, Wei Guo?" "That's me." Wei Guo nodded with a smile, looking extraordinary. He was secretly pleased with himself. Even the students of Bright Prospects know me. I'm indeed famous. Can I ask you to spar with me in actual combat? I want to know how strong the strongest student of Sunset College is. Ming Xiu directly explained his purpose for coming. Wei Guo smiled and said to Ming Xiu, "You're an exchange student from Bright Prospects College, right?" Ming Xiu nodded slightly before continuing, You decide the time and place. A young lad from a third-rate college is eager to prove himself. Unfortunately, he's too ambitious. He wants to challenge me, the president of the student council, the moment he arrives. He's really young. Wei Gu was too experienced in dealing with such matters. His smile didn't change as he took out a coin and placed it on the table in front of him. Then, he said to Ming Xiu, "Student, there's no need to go through so much trouble. See this coin? I'll do something to it. If you can do the same, consider it your win." "All right." Ming Xiu agreed without any hesitation. Chapter 312. Wei Gu extended his palm and casually pressed down on the coin on the table. Then, he removed his hand and looked at Ming Xiu with a smile. "Did you see it clearly?" Ming Xiu's gaze landed on the coin and saw that there was a tiny hole in the middle of the coin. He reached out and picked up the coin. He saw that the coin had been pierced, but the table below wasn't damaged at all. "Condensing power into a needle?" Ming Xiu said as he placed the coin on the table. "You have a good eye. You can give it a try." Wei Gu was very pleased with himself. This technique of condensing power into a needle was his proudest technique. To be able to condense his palm force into the tip of a needle and control it freely was impossible for an ordinary person to achieve it without more than 10 years of hard work. It had nothing to do with strength. This was an extreme use of strength. Otherwise, no matter how strong one's strength was, even if they could shatter the coin, it would be impossible to leave a hole the size of a needle on it. With this move, Wei Gu had managed to dissuade many challengers without any bloodshed. He was already used to it. Ming Xiu didn't say a word. He only extended his palm and pressed it on the coin. Then, he removed his palm and looked at Wei Gu. "Can you spar with me now?" Wei Gu looked at the coin and was immediately alarmed. He saw that there was an additional hole on the coin. It was even thinner than the hole he had left behind. He picked up the coin and looked at it. Seeing that there was no damage on the table, Wei Gu thought to himself, a third-rate school like Bright Prospects College actually has such an expert in strength control. It's really surprising. From the looks of it, this fellow looks very difficult to deal with. It's necessary for me to defeat him. There's no benefit in doing so. If I lose, wouldn't I be humiliated? With a thought, Wei Gu immediately had an idea. He smiled at Ming Xiu and asked, "How should I address you?" "Ming Xiu," Ming Xiu answered. "Ming Xiu, of course you can challenge me, but I have to ask you first. Do you want to challenge me, the president of the student council, or the #1 expert of our Sunset College?" Wei Gu asked. "Is there a difference?" Ming Xiu asked in puzzlement. "Of course there's a difference. Although I'm the president of the student council, the publicly recognized #1 expert in our school is someone else. If you want to challenge the #1 expert, I'm afraid you've found the wrong person," Wei Gu said. "Who's the #1 expert?" Ming Xiu asked. "Our academy's #1 expert is Hui Haifeng, who is known as the Invincible Fist God." Wei Gu directly betrayed Hui Haifeng. After all, he and Hui Haifeng were sworn enemies. He could get Ming Xiu to cause trouble for Hui Haifeng. "Where can I find him?" When Ming Xiu heard the impressive title of Invincible Divine Fist, he felt that Wei Gu wasn't lying. If he wasn't really that strong, why would he dare use the title of Invincible? Furthermore, as the president of Sunset College's student council, it was unlikely that he would spout nonsense. Wei Gu wasn't spouting nonsense. Hui Haifeng really had such a nickname, but it was just a joke used by the members of the club. In the past, Wei Gu had been very disdainful of Hui Haifeng's nickname. At this moment, he was only making use of it. "Wait." Wei Gu made a phone call and quickly found Hui Haifeng's whereabouts. Then, he said to Ming Xiu with a smile, "He should be in Old Dragon Cave in Dragon Gate Grotto. It's not difficult to find him there. You can ask around in school or use the map to navigate." "Thank you." Ming Xiu turned around and left. After watching Ming Xiu leave, Wei Gu looked at the coin again. He saw that not only was the pinhole fine, but it was also very round. It was much more exquisite than Wei Ji's. This fellow is really quite powerful. If I were to fight him, I might not be able to win. How could a third-rate school like Bright Prospects College produce such a freak? Wei Gu was secretly puzzled. A student like him should be able to get into a famous school. However, when he thought of how much trouble he had given Hui Haifeng, Wei Gu was delighted. If Ming Xiu really defeated Hui Haifeng, he would be in for a treat. Zhou went to Wang Mingyuan's place to study. Just as he arrived in front of Dragon Gate Grotto, he saw Ming Xiu standing at the intersection. He had his head lowered as though he was hesitating about which path to take. Stop looking. GPS is useless in Dragon Gate Grotto. Where do you want to go? Zhou walked in front of him and asked. When Ming Xiu saw that it was Zhou, he asked, I'm looking for Hui Haifeng. I heard he's in Old Dragon Cave, right? Why are you looking for Hui Haifeng? Zhou asked curiously. Wei Gu said that he's the #1 expert of Sunset College, so I want to see how strong the #1 expert of Sunset College is, Ming Xiu said. Zhou was somewhat speechless when he heard that. He had sent Ming Xiu to Wei Gu, but Wei Gu had actually sent him to find Hui Haifeng. You know Hui Haifeng? Ming Xiu sized up Zhou and asked. We're learning from the same tutor. We can be considered fellow disciples, Zhou said as he considered how he could resolve the trouble that was Ming Xiu. Zhou, what are you doing here? Before Zhou could think of a solution, Hui Haifeng walked out of Dragon Gate Grotto himself. This is Ming Xiu from Bright Prospects High School. He wants to challenge you. Zhou had no choice but to introduce Ming Xiu to Hui Haifeng and explain his identity. Ming Xiu, why do you want to challenge me? Hui Haifeng asked with a smile without panicking at all. Someone said that you are the #1 expert of Sunset College. I want to know how strong the #1 expert of Sunset College is, Ming Xiu said. That's right. That person has good taste. However, Ming Xiu, if anyone can challenge me as they please, as the #1 expert of Sunset College, I wouldn't have to do anything all day. Just accepting challenges would tire me to death. Hui Haifeng changed the topic as he pointed at Zhou and said, How about this? This is my junior. He's ranked the lowest among my tutor's 4 students. He's also the weakest. Defeat him first before I consider accepting your challenge. By the side, Zhou nearly spat out the mouthful of water he had just drunk. Hui Haifeng was too shameless. Ming Xiu looked at Zhou and made an inviting gesture. Then I'll be troubling you. Zhou was somewhat depressed. He didn't have the time to fight with Ming Xiu. He still had a few questions he wanted to ask Wang Mingyuan. Coach, I've already understood what you taught me the last time. When is the next class? As Zhou was thinking, Feng Qiuyan ran over. When he saw Zhou, he immediately said, Ahem. Feng Qiuyan, let me introduce you. This is Ming Xiu from Bright Prospects High School. He's an exchange student who just came to our school. He's very strong. Spar with him. It can be considered a test of your recent strength progress, Zhou said as he pointed at Ming Xiu. All right. Feng Qiuyan agreed immediately, his eyes filled with fighting spirit. Chapter 313. Ming Xiu revealed a look of displeasure. When he heard Feng Qiuyan address Zhou as coach, he imagined that Feng Qiuyan was groomed by Zhou. Sparring with such a person seemed to be belittling him. Feng Qiuyan's strength isn't inferior to mine. As long as you can defeat him, you can directly challenge Senior Haifeng. Zhou hurriedly pushed the ball back to Hui Haifeng. When Ming Xiu heard that, his expression eased up slightly as he looked at Feng Qiuyan. At this moment, the two of them were like lightning meeting fire. Their gazes met and they immediately went to the arena together. Ming Xiu originally imagined that he could easily defeat Feng Qiuyan, who wasn't famous at all, but in this battle, he failed to gain an advantage. Feng Qiuyan's saber techniques vaguely had the aura of a master. His saber moved freely, and his spirit became stronger as the battle went on. His saber techniques were like a surging river that left others breathless. Ming Xiu couldn't help but turn serious. He used his unbelievable life providence powers to fight Feng Qiuyan with all his might, but he was only able to fight to a draw. It was difficult for him to clinch victory. The shock in Ming Xiu's heart was indescribable. His life providence was that of a peerless paragon. He learned everything much faster than others. Techniques that others needed a year of arduous training could be grasped by him in a few days. He could quickly understand concepts that others found difficult to comprehend just by looking at them. Among his peers, he had never experienced what it felt like to be an opponent. He originally imagined that Sunset College was only slightly more famous and that the students were only SOSO. It was impossible for them to be stronger than him. However, he never expected that he still couldn't defeat Feng Qiuyan despite using all his strength. As for Feng Qiuyan calling Zhou coach, it was obvious that he was groomed by Zhou. Hui Haifeng also said that Zhou was the weakest of their tutor's 4 students. Sunset College is really full of hidden talents. Ming Xiu, who originally found it boring coming to Sunset College as an exchange student, suddenly had a change in his gaze. The two of them fought in the arena for more than an hour without a victor being decided. They were already exhausted. "Is that Zhou really your coach?" Ming Xiu didn't believe that a person who could fight him to a draw would be groomed by someone about his age. "Yes," Feng Qiuyan answered honestly. "Then is it like what he said, that your strength is about the same as his?" Ming Xiu asked again. "I don't know how strong Coach is, but it's because Coach has given me 3 pointers in the past 2 to 3 months that I'm in my current realm. Before this, I was far from your match. I would have been defeated in less than 10 moves," said Feng Qiuyan. Feng Qiuyan believed that he was telling the truth, but even he didn't know that Zhou had never given him any proper guidance. He had figured everything out himself. However, these words sounded different in Ming Xiu's ears. A person who couldn't even withstand 10 strikes from him in the past was able to fight him to a draw after receiving 3 pointers from Zhou. It was unbelievable, but the Feng Qiuyan in front of him looked like that kind of stubborn and focused person. Such a person did not seem likely to lie either. There's actually such a genius in this world. I was a frog in the well in the past. From the looks of it, coming to Sunset College was the right decision. Ming Xiu suddenly laughed. Days without an opponent or goal were too boring for him. Now that people like Feng Qiuyan and Zhou had appeared, he felt as though his entire life had come alive. Tianjinjin and the students from Bright Prospects gathered in the cafeteria. From time to time, they would sweep their gazes towards the cafeteria's entrance, but they didn't see the familiar figure appear. "Zhenjin, we've already asked around. The person who got first place in Sunset College's comprehensive test this year is the Student Council President, Wei Guo. However, the person in the limelight isn't Wei Guo, but a freshman named Zhou. He was already in the top 10 of the comprehensive test when he was at the mortal stage. Not long ago, he defeated Covenant College's John and helped the army kill Sky Spider." A student from Bright Prospects College recounted Zhou Wen's deeds at Sunset College. "Although that Zhou Wen is very strong, much stronger than us, he's definitely not Ming Xiu's match," Tianjinjin said with certainty. "Of course, no matter how strong Zhou Wen is, he's just a slightly stronger student. How can Ming Xiu be the same? He's the god of our Bright Prospects College," another student from Bright Prospects College said matter-of-factly. The other students agreed with his words. Ming Xiu was just too dominant at Bright Prospects College. He was a god in the hearts of all the students. Even the school's tutors believed that Ming Xiu had the right to compete for the top 10 of the league's college students. "Since that Zhou Wen is so famous, let Ming Xiu challenge him first," That way, Ming Xiu can become famous with a single battle and let those arrogant fellows at Sunset College know what a true genius is. Tian Jinjin was filled with confidence. It was as though she could already see all the students of Sunset College gaping in shock after Ming Xiu defeated Zhou Wen. As the few of them were chatting, Ming Xiu walked over. Ming Xiu, why are you so late? Tian Jinjin hurriedly sat Ming Xiu beside her. I was delayed, Ming Xiu said. Ming Xiu, we've already asked around. Now, Sunset College. Before Tian Jinjin could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Ming Xiu. Jinjin, before we came, my mom should have secretly given you quite a bit of money, right? Ming Xiu asked Tian Jinjin. Auntie also asked me to keep it for you in case you need money for anything urgent, Tian Jinjin said in embarrassment. Give me 20,000 yuan, Ming Xiu said. What do you want money for? Tian Jinjin asked in puzzlement as she transferred the money to Ming Xiu. I want Zhou Wen to be my personal coach. He wants to give me some guidance and cultivation advice, Ming Xiu said excitedly. Previously, he had chatted with Feng Chuyen for a long time and found Zhou Wen unfathomable. It was really worth it to hire such a person for 20,000 yuan to teach him. Ming Xiu was a top genius. He could learn everything with a single glance, but at the same time, he had lost his direction. He didn't know what he should learn. It was as though he could learn anything, but he felt that nothing was his forte. This feeling wasn't good. Before today's battle, Ming Xiu only felt the loneliness of being invincible. However, after the battle with Feng Chuyen, he realized that he hadn't even taken his own path. After Feng Chuyen's repeated recommendations, Ming Xiu decided to hire Zhou Wen to draw up a cultivation plan for him and guide him. Even the 20,000 yuan per lesson was told to him by Feng Chuyen. Tian Jinjin and the others from Bright Prospects College were dumbfounded when they heard that. They stared blankly at the excited Ming Xiu, their mouths agape for a long time. They didn't even realize that the food they were holding had dropped. All of them looked at Ming Xiu as though they had seen a ghost. Just a moment ago, they had been discussing how Ming Xiu would defeat Zhou Wen and how he would become famous in Sunset College. But in the blink of an eye, the god in their eyes actually wanted to hire Zhou Wen as his coach. He even wanted Zhou Wen to guide him in cultivation. Instantly, the entire dining table fell silent. Only Ming Xiu spoke excitedly. Chapter 314. Ming Xiu, are you having a fever? Tian Jinjin touched Ming Xiu's head and asked in puzzlement. Ming Xiu pushed Tian Jinjin's hand away. Of course not. Then why did you want to hire that Zhou Wen as your coach? Shouldn't you defeat him and make a name for yourself at Sunset College? Tian Jinjin said. I've already sparred with a student he taught, Ming Xiu said. Shouldn't your opponent be him? Why did you fight a student he taught? What was the outcome? Tian Jinjin asked 3 questions in a row. It was a draw. I didn't win despite using all my strength. That person's saber techniques are just too powerful, Ming Xiu said excitedly. Tian Jinjin and the students from Bright Prospects College were alarmed. Ming Xiu was such a powerful person, but he had only managed to tie with a student taught by Zhou Wen. This was unbelievable. From their point of view, Ming Xiu should be an invincible existence. How could he only tie with a student taught by Zhou Wen? Then, how strong was Zhou Wen? Ming Xiu continued. That student only attended 3 of Zhou Wen's private lessons. According to him, 2 to 3 months ago, his strength wasn't enough to take 10 strikes from me. What? Tian Jinjin and company felt their brains go haywire. To be able to fight Ming Xiu to a draw after just 3 private lessons, this sounded like a fairy tale to them. Ming Xiu, is what you said true? Tian Jinjin couldn't believe it. There's no mistake. A person like Feng Chuyen wouldn't lie at a glance. Furthermore, Zhou Wen is ranked last among his tutor's 4 students. He's the weakest, Ming Xiu added. Is this the famous Sunset College? What kind of monsters are they? Tianjinjin and company were dumbfounded. In their eyes, the invincible study god Ming Xiu didn't seem that outstanding in Sunset College. However, Ming Xiu was very excited. I thought it would be a boring trip, but I never expected to come to the right place. Sunset College is indeed Sunset College. There are too many powerful students here. This feeling is great. In Wang Mingyuan's laboratory, only Zhou Wen and Zhong Zia were there. The two of them faced each other as they played cards. As for Zhou Wen, there were already several pieces of paper stuck to his face. Zhou Wen had originally come to ask Wang Mingyuan some questions regarding cultivation, but Wang Mingyuan hadn't returned from Dragon's Well. Therefore, Zhong Zia suggested that the two of them play cards since they were bored. Zhou Wen originally rejected it. Gaming was better than playing cards. However, Zhong Zia said that if Zhou Wen could beat him at cards, he would give him an epic movement technique crystal. Although Zhou Wen didn't know how to play cards, he felt that when it came to two people, it was 30% skill and 70% luck. Even if his skill wasn't good, he would definitely win as long as his luck was good enough. However, he never expected that Zhong Zia would play reverse with him. Once he made the wrong move, he would lose. The 3 slips of paper on Zhou Wen's face were all because he had made the wrong move. Zhou Wen had seen Zhong Zia and company play before, so he had a rough idea of how to play. However, watching was one thing, and playing it himself was another. It was easy for such cards to go astray and make the wrong move. Zhong Zia played a real card, while Zhou Wen played a reverse. For example, if Zhou Wen played a 7, Zhong Zia would need to play an 8 or above to beat him. However, Zhou Wen couldn't play a 9. Instead, he had to play a card smaller than an 8 to be considered a higher card than Zhong Zia's 8. This was a very special way of playing. It was Zhou Wen's first time playing, and he played reverse the moment he started. As Zhong Zia played cards, he spoke to him, making it easy for Zhou Wen to habitually play cards in a normal manner. He had lost 3 times because of this. It wasn't because his cards were bad. As Zhong Zia played cards, he said with a smile, "Junior, it's not that easy to play reverse. When Jiang Yan first taught me and Hui Haifeng how to play, the two of us had quite a number of paper slips stuck to us. Just treat it as paying more tuition fees. I already know how to play." Again, Zhou Wen said. "You can play as many rounds as you want," Zhong Zia said with a smile. The habits of human thought weren't that easy to change. After living for more than 10 years, he had always played reverse. It was very easy for him to be led astray when he was suddenly asked to play reverse. Back then, Zhong Zia had spent quite a bit of time to fully adapt to this way of thinking. It definitely wouldn't be easy for Zhou Wen to adapt immediately. Furthermore, Zhong Zia had been deliberately talking to Zhou Wen, distracting him from thinking about the topic. It was easier for him to make mistakes. Back when Zhong Zia first learned to play cards, he didn't dare speak to Jiang Yan. Once he was distracted, he would make mistakes. After a long time, he could play cards while chatting with Jiang Yan and company. Hui Haifeng's situation was similar to his. The only person who could chat with them without making any mistakes was Wang Mingyuan. Zhong Zia didn't know if Wang Mingyuan had played such cards before or if there was some other reason. In any case, he had never seen Wang Mingyuan make any mistakes when playing cards. As for Jiang Yan, who had suggested playing cards this way, Zhong Zia hadn't seen him make any mistakes. However, he was the one who suggested it, so he must have played it for a long time in the past. It wasn't strange. Zhong Zia originally imagined that Zhou Wen would definitely need some time to adapt or that he wouldn't talk to him. He would focus on playing cards and slowly think. That way, he could avoid making mistakes. However, Zhou Wen didn't do that. He continued chatting and playing cards with him. The speed at which he played cards was also normal. He didn't deliberately slow down to think. However, from the 4th round onwards, Zhou Wen didn't make any mistakes. Although Zhou Wen still lost in the end, It was because his cards weren't good and he didn't have any skill in playing them. He got used to it so quickly? Zhong Zia found it unbelievable as he continued fighting with Zhou Wen a few more times. Soon, he realized that Zhou Wen had really gotten used to it. No matter how he spoke to Zhou Wen, he couldn't make Zhou Wen make any mistakes no matter how much he tried to distract him. This fellow's talent in this aspect might be better than mine and Hui Haifeng's. Zhong Zia was slightly surprised. I'm not playing anymore. It's really boring. Seeing that Zhou Wen didn't make any mistakes and that his card skills seemed to be getting better, Zhong Zia was really afraid that he would fail miserably. Let's play another 2 rounds. If you lose, I don't want your crystal. Zhou Wen had just started playing and found it interesting, so he naturally wasn't willing to let Zhong Zia off. Zhong Zia had no choice but to agree to play another 2 rounds. When Wang Mingyuan came out of Dragon's Well, Zhong Zia and Zhou Wen had quite a number of slips of paper stuck to their faces. It surprised Wang Mingyuan slightly. According to what he knew, this was Zhou Wen's first time playing reverse. To be able to exchange blows with Zhong Zia, it seemed like he had good talent in this aspect. Chapter 3:15. Let's make it big, my little tiger. Zhou Wen had killed the Binyang Cave's tiger countless times in-game, but he was disappointed once again. He still failed to drop a companion egg. Are pets that add luck really that hard to drop? Zhou Wen was somewhat speechless. He remembered that Wang Lu had the lucky baby tiger drop the first time. Why was it so difficult for him? He went to the poison WYRM pool again. Thankfully, the poison WYRM pool gave Zhou Wen a pleasant surprise. Another primordial energy skill crystal drop. After Zhou Wen absorbed it, the system notified him that he had comprehended Poison Dragon Finger 5. Now, Zhou Wen had 4 Poison Dragon Fingers. He was probably only short of Poison Dragon Finger 3. In fact, a few Poison Dragon Finger crystals had dropped previously, but they were all repeated. There were 1, 4, 2, and so on. 3 and 5 seemed especially difficult to drop. Today, he finally dropped 5, but there was still no sign of 3. The dragon transformation art hadn't dropped yet, and the drop rate was similarly very low. Zhou Wen had no other choice but to slowly grind. After all, he had plenty of opportunities. He just needed to slowly grind. Ding dong. Just as Zhou Wen was about to send himself to his death in the underground sea, the doorbell suddenly rang. When he opened the door, he saw Ming Xiu. Why are you here? What's the matter? Zhou Wen looked at Ming Xiu in puzzlement. This fellow was rather independent. Even if there was anything, he wouldn't come to him, a student tutor. Zhou Wen, I want you to be my personal coach. A private lesson is 20,000, right? Give me your account number. I'll transfer it to you now, Ming Xiu said directly. He had previously lost Zhou Wen's phone number, so he could only look for him himself. After asking around for a while, he found where Zhou Wen lived. Don't listen to Feng Qiuyan's nonsense. I'm just a student like you. How can I be your personal coach? When Zhou Wen heard the keywords private coach and 20,000, he immediately guessed that Feng Qiuyan had said something. Is it because I'm Ming Cheng's student? However, Ming Xiu misunderstood and thought that Zhou Wen wasn't willing to be his personal coach because he wasn't a student of Sunset College. No, I really don't have the right to teach you. Zhou Wen shook his head and explained. I remember that you should be my tutor, right? Tutoring me in my studies is also your responsibility, right? Ming Xiu lowered his head in thought for a moment. Just as Zhou Wen thought that he had finally figured it out, Ming Xiu looked up at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen was momentarily at a loss for words. Ming Xiu took out her phone and asked Zhou Wen, What's your phone number? Add me as a friend so that it'll be easier for us to contact each other in the future. I'll say this first. I really have nothing to teach you. There's no need for the money. Let's research together. Zhou Wen helplessly took out his phone and added Ming Xiu as a friend. You don't have to be so humble. I've heard about you from Feng Chuyan. Your teaching method is truly unique and leaves a deep impression. I hope you can use that method to teach me. After adding Zhou Wen as a friend, Ming Xiu transferred 20,000 yuan to him. What did Feng Chuyan tell him? Cold sweat broke out on Zhou Wen's forehead. Who knew what unique teaching methods he had? After all, Zhou Wen didn't know. You can do whatever you like. I don't have time today. Tomorrow is the day Counselor Wang Fei assigns homework missions. When the homework missions come out, let's complete them together. Zhou Wen couldn't explain it clearly, nor could he be bothered to explain further. Teaching through practice. You are indeed as Feng Chuyan said, Ming Xiu said with a nod in satisfaction. Ming Xiu nodded in satisfaction. With that said, she ignored Zhou Wen's reaction and turned to leave. Zhou Wen gaped as he watched Ming Xiu leave. After a while, he muttered to himself, "Is he sick?" After returning to his room, he realized that there was an unread message on his phone. He opened it and saw that it was from Ensheng. He said that they had made a new discovery in the ruins and had found the entrance to the inner sanctum. However, the situation in the inner sanctum was terrible. It was unknown if a few batches of people had survived after going down. Up to now, no one had walked out of the inner sanctum alive. And Sheng and company were trying their best to study the secrets of the inner sanctum, hoping to find old Mr. Ouyang as soon as possible. They would inform him if there was any news. Zhou Wen sent Ensheng a message, but Ensheng didn't reply after waiting for a while. He didn't know if he had entered a region without signal or if he was too busy to reply. I have to quickly think of a way to pass through the underground sea and head to the temple to take a look. It's better to use the blood-colored avatar to explore the inner sanctum than to sacrifice those warriors for nothing. Zhou Wen was afraid that the former principal had already died in the inner sanctum. If that happened, what he was doing now would be meaningless. Early the next morning, Zhou Wen received a message from the class chat group. It was a homework mission assigned by Wang Fei. Is it just killing a golden warrior? Zhou Wen heaved a sigh of relief when he saw how simple the homework mission was. Recently, he needed a lot of time to grind. He didn't have the mood or time to study anything else. It was best if he could easily complete the homework mission. Coach, when are we doing the homework mission? Just as Zhou Wen was about to wash up, he received a message from Ming Xiu. The homework mission required him to be completed in 10 days. Zhou Wen originally planned on doing it in a few days, but with the troublesome Ming Xiu around, it would be even more troublesome if Ming Xiu called him every day. Therefore, Zhou Wen thought for a moment. He decided to complete the homework mission today to prevent Ming Xiu from looking for him again. He arranged a time with Ming Xiu to head to Myriad Buddha Cave. When Zhou Wen arrived, he realized that Ming Xiu was already waiting for him. Coach, what do you plan on teaching me today? Ming Xiu asked. I've already said that there's nothing I can teach you. Today is the homework mission, killing golden warriors, Zhou Wen said as he walked. Killing golden warriors? Ming Xiu revealed a contemplative expression as though he was thinking about something. The golden warriors' defense was too high, and the drop rate was relatively low. Very few people came here. As for the other students who had received the homework mission to kill golden warriors, they were probably still studying the golden warriors' information. They would probably come here in a day or two. Therefore, when Zhou Wen and Ming Xiu entered, there was no one alive in Myriad Buddha Cave. Are you confident of killing a golden warrior? Zhou Wen turned to ask Ming Xiu. Yes, I've already read the information on golden warriors. It's not difficult for me, Ming Xiu answered. Then you go first. I'll record it for you, Zhou Wen said to Ming Xiu. It was normal to hand the recording to Wang Fei as evidence of completing the homework mission, but in Ming Xiu's ears, there was an additional layer of meaning. Do you want to understand my own abilities and characteristics before formulating a targeted cultivation plan? Ming Xiu decided to showcase his abilities and try his best to let Zhou Wen understand his present situation. Chapter 316. The corners of Zhou Wen's eyes twitched as he watched Ming Xiu fight the Golden Warrior. Ming Xiu was indeed very powerful. In terms of combat skills, he wasn't inferior to Zhou Wen. Furthermore, he was good at all kinds of technique. It could be said that he was proficient in all 18 moves. However, no matter how strong he was, what was the point of ravaging a Golden Warrior? From the beginning to now, Ming Xiu had been fighting a Golden Warrior for more than an hour. He could have easily killed the Golden Warrior, but he would always raise his hand and land it gently. The Golden Warrior had suffered countless blows from him and was beaten miserably, but it still didn't die. Even Zhou Wen couldn't stand it any longer. Although it was a dimensional creature, there was no need to torture it in such a manner. If you want to kill, kill. If you don't, scram. What's the point of torturing it for more than an hour? Sadist? Zhou Wen didn't think as much as Ming Xiu. He imagined that Ming Xiu was flaunting his skills and abilities. Ming Xiu, on the other hand, was very excited. He displayed everything he knew. However, Ming Xiu was too much of a genius. He knew too many things. He displayed them one by one, and Ming Xiu was sweating profusely from exhaustion. However, Ming Xiu felt that it was necessary. Otherwise, how could Zhou Wen formulate a cultivation plan for him without knowing his situation? If it were in the past, Zhou Wen would have known Ming Xiu's location without looking at him with Truth Listener's ability. If he could film him, Zhou Wen would have long gamed. Now that Truth Listener was still incubating, if Zhou Wen looked at his phone, he wouldn't be able to accurately film Ming Xiu. Therefore, he could only patiently film him. However, he was already a little impatient. This was simply wasting his life. When Ming Xiu felt that he had shown enough, he finally killed the Golden Warrior. Even Zhou Wen felt aggrieved for the Golden Warrior. "It's your turn to film me," Zhou Wen said to Ming Xiu, who was wiping his sweat. "All right." Ming Xiu nodded and took out his phone to aim at Zhou Wen before following behind him. Zhou Wen was already anxious from waiting and had lost his patience. When he saw a Golden Warrior, he rushed forward and slashed it with his bamboo blade. He looked at Ming Xiu unhappily before turning to leave. "I can finally return to gaming," Zhou Wen thought to himself. Ming Xiu looked pensive when he saw Zhou Wen slay the Golden Warrior with one strike. What a clean saber technique, but there doesn't seem to be anything special. It's just that the saber is too sharp. Wait, it's definitely not that simple. Feng Qiuyan once said that Zhou Wen likes to infuse what he wants to say into his actions. Just now, he looked at me with such a strange gaze. He must be hinting at something. There must be some secret hidden in this strike. It's just that I haven't figured it out yet, Ming Xiu thought. That's all for today. I'll inform you the next time there's a homework mission, Zhou Wen said to Ming Xiu after leaving Myriad Buddha Cave. Upon hearing Zhou Wen's words, Ming Xiu was even more certain that there was a secret to Zhou Wen's strike. Otherwise, it was impossible for Zhou Wen to not formulate a plan for him after giving him 20,000 yuan. "Coach, don't worry. I'll definitely gain some insight before the next homework mission," Ming Xiu said. Zhou Wen couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on him. He got Ming Xiu to return on his own while he went to Wang Mingyuan's laboratory. It was especially interesting to listen to Wang Mingyuan's lectures. Wang Mingyuan always talked about all sorts of nonsense, as though it was useless. It was as though he was telling a story or telling a joke. However, after listening to it, he would suddenly realize that a particular story Wang Mingyuan told seemed to be very similar to this matter. It made Zhou Wen feel like he was dealing with such matters from a third party's point of view. He was no longer limited to the perspective of someone involved. Therefore, Zhou Wen was very willing to listen to Wang Mingyuan's nonsense. However, Wang Mingyuan didn't have much time. Occasionally, he would lecture the four of them. Most of the time, he would assign them homework tasks. Now, Zhou Wen's main job was to pull the chain that sank into Dragon's Well. Although Zhou Wen's strength had improved significantly, pulling the chain was still very strenuous. The cold aura on the chain was just too powerful. It also indirectly indicated how terrifying the white dragon was. After Ming Xiu returned, he kept pondering over what Zhou Wen's strike was trying to tell him. However, he couldn't figure out what special meaning such an ordinary strike had. This vexed him. After some thought, Ming Xiu began to suspect if Zhou Wen was fooling him. When it was time to meet Feng Chuyen, Ming Xiu sparred with Feng Chuyen. After sparring, he told Feng Chuyen his doubts. Feng Chuyen frowned in thought when he heard that. Then, he told Ming Xiu with certainty, "Coach's strike naturally has a deeper meaning. It's just that you can't see the situation clearly, so you didn't understand." "You understand the meaning of that strike?" Ming Xiu's eyes lit up as he asked Feng Chuyen. "Of course. The more I think about it, the more I feel that Coach's strike is too brilliant. It's just too exciting. Only someone as understanding as Coach can come up with such a brilliant method to remind you," Feng Chuyen said to Ming Xiu in all seriousness. He was just short of smacking his thigh and saying that Coach was brilliant. "Why don't you tell me what he wanted to remind me with that slash?" Ming Xiu clearly didn't have Feng Chuyen's strong imagination. He still couldn't figure out the deeper meaning behind the strike. Feng Chuyen looked at Ming Xiu and asked in all seriousness, "What do you think your biggest problem is now?" Ming Xiu thought for a moment and said, "I've learned too many things. I don't know what I'm really good at. I don't know how I should take my future path." "That's right." Feng Chuyen nodded and said, "Now, you are at a loss when it comes to finding your path. You feel that you can do anything, but you can't be especially proficient in anything. Therefore, Coach used the most ordinary strike to tell you that the most ordinary strike that can hit the vitals is the most suitable for you." "What's the most ordinary strike that can hit the vitals?" Ming Xiu still wore a puzzled look. "Buddhists have a saying, 'A flower is heaven, a blade of grass is a world.' Everything has a great Tao. A person's life and energy are limited after all. It's already a great fortune to be able to study one thing in one's entire life. Coach's strike is telling you not to be blinded by appearances. Use your own heart to feel what you need. There's no need to care about what others think. No matter how ordinary the path is, it's your own choice. You can also walk a great Tao that leads to the heavens. All you need to do is continue forging forward." The more Feng Chuyen spoke, the more agitated he became. "Ask your own heart. You definitely have your most ordinary and most direct thought. Just like when you look at women, no matter how many women stand together, no matter what you think in your heart, your eyes will automatically look at the one you think is the most beautiful. It's the same for martial arts. No matter how many things you know, there will definitely be one that you are willing to learn first. That's your heart, that's your destiny. My heart, my destiny, the kind that I'm willing to learn first." Ming Xiu felt his mind explode as he recalled his childhood. It was a past he could never forget. Chapter 317. When Ming Xiu was young, a breakout creature had attacked the place they lived. It was his father who had risked his life to kill the breakout creature and protect the young Ming Xiu. In the young Ming Xiu's heart, his father was the greatest person in the world. His swordsmanship was also the strongest in the world. When he grew up, he would definitely learn his father's swordsmanship and become someone like his father. However, when he really grew up, too many people told him that his father's sword techniques were too ordinary and that there was no value in learning them. There was no possibility of him reaching the pinnacle and that it wasn't compatible with a genius like him. He should learn a stronger sword technique. Ming Xiu didn't believe it, so he still learned his father's sword technique. However, the truth was just as those people said. His father's sword techniques were only very strong when he was young, but in fact, they were far inferior to the sword techniques of those sword experts. Ming Xiu easily learned them, and they were indeed not strong. Although he knew that it was a fact that his father's sword techniques weren't strong, Ming Xiu always felt a little regretful. He had always had a unique feeling about his father's sword techniques. Even though the sword techniques were far inferior to the top sword techniques in the world, Ming Xiu had never forgotten them. However, he subconsciously didn't use them. There was an indescribable feeling deep in his heart. Today, Feng Qiuyan's words touched the deepest feelings in Ming Xiu's heart, making his brain feel like it had been struck by lightning. That's right. Why should I give up? So what if father's sword techniques are ordinary? In my heart, it's the strongest sword technique in the world. If it's not strong enough to be acknowledged by the world, I'll practice it desperately and make it the strongest sword technique in the world. I'll make everyone acknowledge it as the strongest sword technique in the world. Ming Xiu's heart burned with a raging fire. Feng Qiuyan, you're too impressive. Thank you. I understand. Ming Xiu hugged Feng Qiuyan excitedly, wishing he could lift him up and throw him into the sky. Feng Qiuyan said indifferently, Coach is too impressive. I'm just telling you what Coach wants you to comprehend with words. I don't know if it's right or not. In fact, it's better if you can comprehend it yourself. Yes, Coach is really too strong. He actually saw through my problem at a glance and used such a method to remind me, but I actually didn't understand it. How stupid. I used to believe that I was a genius, but now I know that compared to Coach, I'm a pig. Having resolved the knot in her heart, Mingxiu felt delighted and excited. She felt that the world was just too beautiful and that Zhou Wen was just too impressive. If Zhou Wen were to hear their conversation, his mouth would probably open wide enough to stuff a duck egg in. Then, he would give Feng Qiuyan a thumbs up and say, You're King awesome. Zhou Wen naturally didn't know about this. He was grinding the poison Wyrm pool in his dorm. He had lost count of the number of times he had grinded the poison Wyrm pool. After killing the poison Wyrm again, Zhou Wen heard a chime. However, he was already numb to such sounds. The poison Wyrm often dropped primordial energy skill crystals, but they were basically the 3 poison dragon fingers. However, this time, when one looked at the crystal, he realized that it was somewhat different. In the past, the poison Wyrm shadows in the poison Wyrm crystals were black, but this one was red. It was as though the poison Wyrm had been skinned. It looked extremely strange. Zhou Wen hurriedly controlled the blood-colored avatar to pick up the poison Wyrm crystal and absorb it. A numbing and itchy force flowed out of the phone and surged into Zhou Wen's body. It made him feel extremely itchy beneath his skin, as though he was about to shed his skin. Of course, this was just an illusion. Zhou Wen didn't shed his skin. After the feeling completely vanished, a notification popped up in-game. Absorbed poison Wyrm crystal. Attained epic primordial energy skill. Dragon transformation art, rank 7. Although it wasn't the strongest rank 9, rank 7 was already rather high. In fact, Zhou Wen was already rather satisfied as long as he could grind for the dragon transformation art. It was just too difficult to drop. I finally have the dragon transformation art. Zhou Wen was overjoyed as he felt the information surging into his brain from the dragon transformation art. He digested the various information. Coincidentally, there was water everywhere in Pool City. Zhou Wen tested it in the water and immediately felt the difference. In the past, he felt that water was just water. When he moved in it, he needed to overcome powerful resistance. But now, Zhou Wen felt somewhat different when he entered the water. It was as though the water was pushing his body, allowing him to swim in the water. It was many times easier and faster. The dragon transformation art is really good stuff. Only then did Zhou Wen realize that instead of calling the dragon transformation art a movement technique, it was more like a technique that allowed one to sense the characteristics of water. It allowed Zhou Wen to use the power of water in a reasonable manner and not fight it head-on. With the dragon transformation art, this was only the beginning. With it, Zhou Wen's speed in the water was much faster. However, he still needed to practice the various movement techniques in actual combat in the water. Coupled with the dragon transformation art, Zhou Wen's movement techniques had undergone some modifications. He didn't suffer many restrictions when fighting in the water. After familiarizing himself with the benefits of the dragon transformation art, Zhou Wen eagerly headed for the underground sea. He wanted to see if he could pass through the Black Dragon's protection and obtain the Dragon Pearl. When he arrived at the underground sea again, Zhou Wen followed his old method. He first lured the 9 dragons over in the air before using the white shadow of poison as bait to attract their attention. He then used ghost steps to instantly rush into the sea. The moment he entered the seawater, Zhou Wen felt somewhat different from before. It was as though the surrounding seawater was flowing happily around him. With a gentle stroke, Zhou Wen's figure had already rushed more than 10 meters away. He swam faster than a fish, like a humanoid WRM. The dragon transformation art wasn't a movement technique, but a transformation technique for WYRMS to transform into dragons. And this process, with WYRMS being water spirit beasts, after transforming into dragons, they were the kings of the water. Therefore, the dragon transformation art could allow one to sense the water elements and obtain the help of the water element. It could indeed greatly increase one's speed in the water. It wasn't wrong to call it a water elemental movement technique. Zhou Wen was delighted as he swam towards the metal war chariot. He was many times faster than before, and soon, he arrived in front of the metal war chariot. At that moment, a dragon finally rushed over and opened its mouth to devour Zhou Wen. Large amounts of seawater were sucked into its mouth, forming a huge underwater vortex. If it were in the past, Zhou Wen would have been sucked in without any ability to resist. However, this time, Zhou Wen followed the vortex's force and rushed out of it, rushing to the bottom of the war chariot. The metal war chariot was right in front of him. This was the first time Zhou Wen was so close to the metal war chariot after dying so many times. However, he was below the metal war chariot, and the dragon pearl was on the top of the war chariot. Zhou Wen stuck to the bottom of the war chariot to avoid the black dragon's line of sight. At the same time, he swam to the back of the war chariot, hoping to flip onto the roof from the back. Chapter 3:18. The 9 dragons had already returned to the seawater and swam over from different directions in a bid to devour the blood-colored avatar under the carriage. Unfortunately, their bodies were chained up, so their every move was restrained. Otherwise, the blood-colored avatar would have long been devoured by them. With the war wagon's cover, Zhou Wen shuttled through the seaweed and coral above and dodged several attacks. Finally, he arrived at the back of the war wagon. Then, with a flip, he leaped to the top of the war wagon and flipped over. Zhou Wen remembered that the Dragon Ball was located closer to the front, so he continued charging forward. Just as the Dragon Ball was in front of him, less than 5 meters away from him, the blood-colored avatar was swallowed by a black dragon that rushed over from the side. The game screen immediately went black. Zhou Wen wasn't alarmed but delighted. Now that he was so close to the Dragon Ball, it proved that he had the possibility of obtaining it. As long as he did better, he would definitely be able to obtain it. However, Zhou Wen soon realized that he had rejoiced too early. The black dragons were indeed true dragons. Although they were chained up and it wasn't convenient for them to move, they were still much faster than Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen was able to flip over the roof several times, but he ultimately failed to approach the Dragon Ball. He was always a few meters away. Zhou Wen originally wanted to use the demonic astral wheel to suck the Dragon Ball over, but after a few attempts, the Dragon Ball remained motionless despite sucking in a lot of seawater, seaweed, and coral. After some thought, Zhou Wen realized that the only way to obtain the Dragon Ball was to dodge the Black Dragon's attack. He was already very close to the Dragon Ball, but he lacked the final sprint. Therefore, Zhou Wen deliberately observed the Black Dragon's actions in the water, as well as their behavior and patterns, hoping to find a way to break through them. However, after watching for some time, Zhou Wen suddenly realized that the black dragon's movement techniques in the water were indeed extremely marvelous. They contained a certain principle that Zhou Wen felt that he could use as a reference. It was naturally impossible for ordinary people to imitate the black dragon's movement techniques, but Zhou Wen, who had learned the dragon transformation art, didn't find it difficult. After in-depth study, Zhou Wen realized that the 9 black dragons looked the same, but in fact, they were slightly different. Their postures were also different. Every black dragon had its own unique posture in the water, and Zhou Wen, who had the dragon transformation art, only needed to imitate them slightly to become more agile in the water. He was like a fish in water. The more Zhou Wen studied them, the more he found the black dragon's stances marvelous. He organized the 9 black dragon's stances and felt that they could form a set of movement technique. The more he studied the black dragon's posture, the closer Zhou Wen was to the dragon pearl. There were already several times when Zhou Wen was only an arm's length away from obtaining the dragon pearl. Zhou Wen had a hunch that he would soon obtain the dragon pearl. Zhou Wen was already extremely familiar with the stance of the 9 dragons. His movement technique had completely fused with the characteristics of the 9 dragons' stance. It could be considered perfect. However, Zhou Wen still felt that something was lacking. It was as though he hadn't truly grasped its essence. As long as he could figure out the final problem, he could use the movement technique he comprehended from the 9 dragons' stance to obtain the dragon pearl. Which part is lacking? Zhou Wen planned on going to Wang Mingyuan's place and showing him the movement technique he had figured out. He wanted him to see what was lacking in this movement technique. Wang Mingyuan had been entering dragons well more and more recently, and the time he spent inside was increasing. When Zhou Wen arrived at the laboratory again, he still didn't see him. Jiang Yan was the only one in the laboratory. "Zhou Wen, do you still remember that you still owe me a favor when we killed the mutated fairy?" Jiang Yan said as he put down the book in his hand when he saw Zhou Wen come over. "I remember. Is there anything you need my help with?" Zhou Wen asked. He had rarely seen Jiang Yan recently, so he didn't know what he had been up to. "I happen to need your help with something. If you have the time, accompany me to Xixiang Kiln," Jiang Yan said. "Why are we going there? To see the Dragon Gate 20 pieces?" Zhou Wen asked in puzzlement. Of the Dragon Gate 20 pieces, 19 of them were in ancient Yang Cave. Only the first piece was in Xixiang Kiln. Zhou Wen had previously taken a look, but if it was to see the inscriptions, there was no need for him to accompany him. According to what Zhou Wen knew, Xixiang Kiln only had some legendary snake-type dimensional creatures. Although there were many of them, it wasn't difficult for Jiang Yan to avoid them with his strength. Jiang Yan said, "It's to see the Dragon Gate 20 pieces. I've been there a few times before, but every time I did, I was disturbed by those snakes. I lost my mood and feelings. This time, accompany me and help me guard by the side. Don't let those snakes disturb me from reading the inscriptions." Zhou Wen looked at Jiang Yan with an odd expression. This fellow actually wanted to get someone to clear the area to read the inscriptions. For this, he had even used a favor from him. He couldn't understand his thoughts. However, since Jiang Yan had raised it, Zhou Wen naturally wouldn't reject him. He accompanied him to Xixiang Kiln. After the dimensional zone's mutation, the space in Xixiang Kiln was much larger. There were connected caves and stone caverns everywhere, and many snake-type dimensional creatures entered and exited. However, they were different from the overlord snakes in Snake Cavern. These snakes were poisonous. If they were bitten, even epic experts would be in trouble. Therefore, not many people came here. As there were too many poisonous snakes, and they typically hid in stone caverns, it was impossible to find and kill them. Jiang Yan ignored the poisonous snakes and dodged their attacks, heading all the way to the Dragon Gate 20 pieces inscription. "I'll read the inscription here. Help me guard it. Don't let them disturb me no matter what," Jiang Yan said to Zhou Wen. Jiang Yan said to Zhou before standing there and focusing on the inscription. He ignored everything behind him. The poisonous snakes in Xixiang Kiln were known as dragon-patterned snakes, but they didn't have dragon patterns on their bodies. They only had patterns that resembled inscriptions. Coupled with the Dragon Gate 20 pieces inscriptions, it was why they had such a name. Dragon-patterned snakes were very poisonous, and there were quite a number of them. Soon, several dragon-patterned snakes swam towards them. Furthermore, there were quite a number of dragon-patterned snakes peeking out of their caves, ready to rush out at any moment. Since I have nothing to do, I might as well practice my movement technique. Zhou didn't use his companion beast. He pulled out his bamboo blade and used his movement technique to deal with the dragon-patterned snakes, killing them at the same time. He wasn't afraid of the dragon-patterned snake's poison. It didn't matter even if he was bitten. He had a high poison stat, and with Dr. Darkness's fight poison with poison, these dragon-patterned snakes posed no threat to him. The dragon-patterned snake's speed was very fast, especially when it leaped up. It was like a WRM leaving its lair, fast, ruthless, and accurate. However, compared to Zhou new movement technique, it was naturally much inferior. It wasn't difficult for Zhou to dodge their attacks, but after seeing more of them, Zhou suddenly had a strange feeling. The snake's posture seemed to be a little similar to his new movement technique. Chapter 319. Zhou carefully observed and realized that the dragon-patterned snakes were only acting instinctively. It was far from the stance he had learned from the dragon's body, but for some reason, Zhou found it somewhat similar. As he killed the dragon-patterned snakes that approached Jiang Yan, he pondered over the reason. After some thought, Zhou's eyes suddenly lit up as though he had understood something. A snake takes 1,000 years to transcend the tribulation to become a WRM, and a WRM takes another 1,000 years to transcend the tribulation to become a dragon. The dragon transformation art is a process of a snake transforming into a dragon. After transforming into a dragon, it's not a dragon. It naturally retains the nature of a snake. I used the dragon transformation art to forcefully imitate the true dragon's stance, so I naturally feel like I'm not a dragon but a snake instead. I always felt that the movement technique I comprehended was lacking something. So this is what I'm lacking. Zhou suddenly understood the problem with his movement technique. Since he knew the problem, he could resolve it. He wasn't as clueless as before and didn't know where to start. If I want to truly shed the influence of a snake's nature and become a true dragon's stance, I have to start from the roots. I have to let the dragon transformation art shed its mortal form and truly reach the realm of dragon transformation. As Zhou fought the snakes, he used the dragon transformation art and constantly figured out the true meaning of the dragon transformation art. There were two ways to raise a primordial energy skills rank. One was to use the primordial energy skill crystal to raise it. As long as the primordial energy skill crystal's rank was high enough, refining and absorbing it could directly raise it to rank 9. The other method was to rely on one's familiarity with and insight into primordial energy skills to raise it to rank 10. This was very slow and difficult to raise. Apart from a few people like Lance, who were extremely talented and could easily comprehend the true meaning of a primordial energy skill and raise it to rank 10, the average person needed a lot of time to study and comprehend it. It was much slower than using the primordial energy skill crystal. It was too difficult to drop the dragon transformation art. It was unknown how long it would take to drop a rank 9 dragon transformation art. Zhou didn't have the time to wait. Furthermore, what he needed wasn't as simple as rank 9, but an extraordinary rank 10. Only then could he match the true dragon's stance, allowing him to truly use the true dragon's stance. As Zhou observed the actions, forms, and habits of the dragon-patterned snakes, he recalled the postures of the 9 black dragons and compared them. Gradually, he understood the difference between snakes and dragons. Zhou gradually realized that dragons and snakes did have many similarities in their habit. It was no wonder snakes were also known as little dragons in the East District. However, even though they were so similar, when people saw a dragon, they would definitely not mistake it for a snake. Apart from the difference in size, the most important thing was that the charm between the two was completely different. Zhou constantly sensed the difference in charm between a snake and a dragon. It was a feeling that couldn't be expressed or described with words. He could only feel it with his heart. As Zhou gained insight, his movement technique didn't change much. However, there were some minute differences. His every move had an additional spirituality to it. Jiang Yan was focused on reading the inscriptions. From time to time, he would frown as though there was something he couldn't understand. Sometimes, he would look enlightened as though he was very happy. However, it didn't take long for Jiang Yan's brows to furrow even tighter. He didn't relax for a long time. As Jiang Yan read the inscription, he muttered to himself, "Dragon Gate 20 pieces, a representative work of calligraphy from the Northern Wei dynasty. It's a typical Wei dynasty style. The brush reveals its edge, and if it wishes to be horizontal, it will first be vertical. If it wishes to be vertical, it will first be horizontal. It's square and sharp like the edge of a blade, but it's not as square as regular script. The Wei tablet style has Han script at the top and Tang script at the bottom. Its charm is the most difficult to grasp. If it's written too thick, it will become regular script. If it's written too thin, it will become clerical script. It's just too difficult to use the Dragon Gate 20 pieces to gain enlightenment and turn it into a technique. If the charm is lacking, it won't have that feeling." Jiang Yan racked his brains, but he couldn't accurately grasp the charm. Feeling a little restless, Jiang Yan knew that he couldn't continue. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to reach the purest realm even if he gained some insight when reading the inscriptions with an impetuous attitude. Retracting his gaze, Jiang Yan planned on resting for a while. When he completely calmed down, he would read the inscriptions. If he couldn't calm down, there was no harm in coming another day. He turned around and sat down on a rock beside him. He took out the small teapot and teacup he had brought with him. There was even a small copper charcoal stove. He lit the charcoal stove, heated the water, and brewed 2 cups of tea. Just as he was about to call Zhou over to drink with him, his gaze landed on Zhou and he couldn't look away. He even forgot to retract his hand that was pouring the tea. The water in the teapot had already submerged the teacup and flowed out, but Jiang Yan didn't notice it at all. All he did was stare intently at Zhou, who was fighting the dragon-patterned snake. Instead of saying that Zhou was fighting the dragon-patterned snake, it was more like he was dancing alone. His movement technique was bold and magnificent, with an indescribable charm. As Jiang Yan watched, he suddenly threw down the small teapot in his hand and ran to a stone wall. He extended his finger and swiped at the stone wall. His finger was like a blade as it tore through the stone wall and wrote one word after another on it. The words looked like Wei Bei's script, but they were somewhat different. Every stroke was like a blade, but it didn't appear too sharp. It was fair and unrestrained. A snake travels for 1,000 years, a WYRM hides for 10,000 years. When the true self emerges from the heavens, it will wash the clear skies and transform into an azure dragon. When Jiang Yan finished writing the word dragon, Zhou happened to let out a long roar. His figure tore through the sky like a true dragon ascending to the heavens. His entire body seemed to have undergone a certain transformation. The surrounding dragon-patterned snakes retreated as though they were trembling. For a moment, none of them dared to attack Zhou again. Although he didn't look at the information in-game, Zhou was very certain that his dragon transformation art had broken through to rank 10. That feeling couldn't be explained with words. "Junior, thanks to you, I managed to figure out something today," Jiang Yan said with a smile. Zhou turned his head and saw the words Jiang Yan had engraved on the wall. Although he didn't understand calligraphy, he realized that there was a familiar feeling in the words. After careful thought, he understood that the words actually contained the movement technique concept he had just comprehended. These words. Zhou looked at the words and asked with an odd expression. This is what I wrote after observing your movement technique and combining it with the words of the Dragon Gate 20 pieces. It's rather interesting. In the future, I'll use this as a foundation and combine it with the Dragon Gate 20 pieces to research a technique. Half of this is due to you. I'll let you name it, Jiang Yin said. I don't know how to name it. It's best you name it. Zhou shook his head. The Dragon Gate 20 pieces has the word dragon to begin with. Your movement technique has the form of a dragon, so you naturally have to have the word dragon. Together with our names, this technique shall be called Dragon Wenyan. As Jiang Yin spoke, he reached out and wiped away the words he had engraved on the stone wall. Chapter 320. What are you doing? Why are you erasing the words? Zhou hurriedly pulled Jiang Yan's hand, finding it a pity. Although this is the best word I've written so far, it will restrict my past. I only seek the future and not the past, so I won't keep this word, Jiang Yan said. It's best not to erase it. I still want to see it. Let's keep it for now. Zhou felt that the concept in the word was too similar to what he had comprehended, but it was also somewhat different. Therefore, Zhou really wanted to see the differences. If you want to see it, keep it for now. However, after you finish reading it, it's best to erase it. It's not a good thing to leave words on the same wall as the ancient. Jiang Yan paused and said, After the Dragon Wenyan is completed, I'll send you a copy. You can take your time reading it. All right. Zhou looked at the words on the stone wall. The first 2 lines had been erased by Jiang Yan, leaving only the words, When my true self appears, I shall cleanse the clear skies and transform into an azure dragon. After leaving Old Dragon Cave and returning to his dorm, Zhou eagerly switched on his phone and entered the Zhuolu Instance dungeon. This time, Zhou wasn't in the mood to bother with the dimensional creatures. He sat on White Shadow of Poison and flew all the way to the underground sea. He wanted to see if he could obtain the Dragon Pearl with his current movement technique. In the blood-colored avatar's information column, not only had the Dragon Transformation art advanced to rank 10, but even its name had changed. It had changed from Dragon Transformation art to 9 Dragons art. Clearly, Zhou had obtained the recognition of the phone system after fusing the 9 dragons with the Dragon Transformation art. I should be able to obtain that Dragon Pearl with the rank 10 9 Dragons art, right? It wasn't easy for Zhou to storm his way to the underground sea and arrive at the sea. Soon, the waves surged as black dragons tore through the waves and extended their heads to devour White Shadow of Poison and Zhou. Zhou leaped up like a trapped dragon entering the sea. In an instant, he swam hundreds of feet away. It didn't feel like he was swimming, but rather like the seawater was pushing him forward. His speed was much faster than before. He flipped into the car and did it in one go. The black dragons didn't even have the time to stop him. Zhou was already on the roof of the strange car. He didn't need to hide under the car to avoid the 9 dragons' attacks like before. At that moment, the 9 black dragons finally charged back. All of them roared as they attempted to devour Zhou. However, Zhou felt very special today. It was as though he was mentally connected to the 9 dragons. He could predict their every move and easily dodge them. Zhou knew that this wasn't because he could really communicate with them telepathically. It was only because he had figured out the 9 dragon stances that he knew their postures like the back of his hand. Therefore, he could know what they wanted to do next. With a change in his movement technique, not only did the seawater not become Zhou's resistance, but it also helped him. After dodging a round of attacks from the 9 black dragons, Zhou finally rushed to the Dragon Pearl for the first time and grabbed it with one hand. Zhou was excited. He had finally obtained the dragon pearl. He felt that it was extremely heavy in his hand, and the 9 black dragons' second round of attacks had already returned. Without any further thought, he pulled with all his might, hoping to take the dragon pearl away. The dragon pearl was indeed pulled up by the blood-colored avatar, but after pulling it more than a meter away, it couldn't be pulled any further. Zhou was surprised to discover that there was a thin thread connected to the bottom of the dragon pearl. It was like a strand of hair and transparent. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see it in the water. Zhou expression changed slightly as he suddenly realized that something was amiss. He tugged a few more times, but the thin thread was extremely sturdy. With the blood-colored avatar's strength, he couldn't tear it apart. Gotcha! At that moment, he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the war wagon. It was as though the gears that had been sealed for a long time were turning again. Due to the lack of lubricant, it produced the sound of metal colliding. What was even stranger was that the 9 black dragons that had been attacking Zhou with all their might didn't pounce at him again. They landed at the bottom of the sea and prostrated themselves on the ground, as though they were trembling. Seeing that he couldn't take the dragon pearl away, Zhou hurriedly released his hand and retreated. He left the war wagon, but he didn't retreat. The blood-colored avatar could be reborn, so Zhou wasn't afraid of death. He wanted to see what changes would happen to the war wagon. As the sound of the gears turning in the war wagon gradually increased, a metal wall on one side of the war wagon gradually fell, revealing a door. Zhou looked into the war chariot and saw that it was pitch black inside. It was as though it was a world without light. Any light that reached there seemed to be severed, preventing it from shining in. Even his gaze was the same. Bam! Bam! As Zhou was peeking at the situation inside the war wagon, he heard continuous sounds of metal fracturing. The black metal chains that bound the black dragons broke one by one, allowing the 9 black dragons to regain their freedom. The 9 black dragons were immediately overjoyed as they excitedly soared into the sky. Instantly, they tore out of the sea and soared into the sky at an unbelievable speed. Only then did Zhou realize that the reason he could survive the siege of the 9 black dragons wasn't because he was strong, but because most of the 9 black dragons' strength had been suppressed by the black chains. Compared to his combat strength, it was insignificant. Now that the 9 black dragons had broken free, the might they displayed was not something that could be compared to before. In the next second, the 9 black dragons rushed back into the sea and roared as they opened their mouths to devour Zhou. Clearly, they wanted to devour Zhou. How heartless! I was the one who saved you, but you are biting the hand that fed you. You are beasts, Zhou cursed inwardly. However, he also knew that with his current strength, it was impossible for him to fight the 9 true dragons that had escaped. Gritting his teeth, he controlled the blood-colored avatar to charge towards the war wagon that had its door mostly opened. Before the 9 true dragons devoured him, he rushed into the darkness. Although the war wagon was huge, it was still a war wagon after all. The space inside was very limited. However, when Zhou rushed into the war wagon, he felt that it was like a dark void. It was boundless, as though there was no end to it. In the darkness, there was a white cocoon that emitted a strange glow. Another cocoon. Zhou was slightly taken aback, but he was overjoyed the next second. There was actually a cocoon here. This meant that he might have a chance of breaking through his final stat. Without any hesitation, he summoned the Overlord's spear and, with the augmentation of Ever Victorious, stabbed at the white cocoon in the void with all his might. However, Zhou's expression turned nasty when the spear stabbed out. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.